The last one. I did read it last night. But I was surprised.
Who's doing that here? No telling. Vernon was the time at morning and night's getting too.
No.
And I didn't leave last night. It was like, I got caught in the parking lot.
Did you really?
Which was over and
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody?
Morning. How are you?
Good. Hey, Miss Pam. Good. How good? How are you? Busy?
Oh my gosh, this week is like, woo!
Crazy, huh? Good, good.
They all flooded in.
Yeah.
tell me about
That's
it.
all right. I bought my groceries, so I'm ready to go now.
Yeah, don't go on Saturday, hopefully.
No, I'm going towards Destin or anywhere like
Two
that.
hot issues going right now. Usually we at least have one, but
Yeah, really.
yeah. This time always passes.
It's a
We get
smart
some
truck
different
right
ones.
there, bud.
Close to.
Oh, wow. We had a good February, didn't we? Good deal.
Boulevard and that's it.
When it gets quiet, I think that means start. So if you would stand and Tim Norris, would you do our invocation and pledge, please?
Sure. Bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us be here today within our community and our constituents here. Please allow us to bring together the ideas and movements and motions to work with the community, the tourism, and our businesses here in this community. We ask you to place your hand upon our decisions as we move forward. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. If you would, silence any cell phones or any devices you have, please. Do we have any public, quorum call? Brian Christensen,
Here.
Tim Norris,
here.
Gary Breimeyer,
Here.
Kurt Tate,
Here.
Jennifer Frost,
Here.
James Richard,
Here.
Art Miller,
Here.
Pam Avery.
Here.
All here. Do we have any public comments on anything on the agenda? Any item on the agenda? Okay, none. So we'll move right along to the approval of the minutes. The February 2nd, 2016 minutes. Have y'all had a chance to look over those?
Yes, I've got one question.
Okay.
16-0157. Where did we leave off on that? There was some concerns about the zip code of the address. I think that was the right number. No, that's the water tower, I'm sorry. There was a question about the zip code of the address for like Alex Beach and all that stuff. Where did that leave off?
We put it in the minutes and I can't, what was our action that we were gonna do on that? The zip codes?
It was
Does anybody, Stan, do you remember what we were gonna do on the zip codes?
Mary.
I do not, actually.
Madam Chair, I think it was that Mary Nielsen brought it up. Those are some things for us to look at
Okay.
and see if we can, so I don't know if we task anybody to actually look at that, but that's what I remember
Yeah,
anyway.
it's in the public comment
It was
section.
public comments, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, let's approve the minutes then, and then we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion approved.
Okay, the second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. The financial report, Melissa?
Good morning.
Good morning.
On the first page of your financial report on this slide, we've got the budget in brief, which just gives you a brief summary of the expenditures through the end of February. Following the summary will be the account detail in your packets. On page 7, and it's on the next slide in the budget in brief, will be the total TDC reserves as of the end of February. And as of February, the TDC had a total of approximately $51.25 million in reserves. The breakdown by the pennies is included for you. On the next slide, we have the year-to-date bed tax collection information. The February bed tax collection total was $542,832, up 7.46% over February of last year. For the first 5 months of the year, bed tax collections have been almost $3.2 million. That's up 11.55% over the same period of fiscal year 15. And I also want to mention 2 notable items that have happened since the council last met. First, we have received the executed agreement for the Western Lake Pedestrian Bridge LAP project. So this is a deferred agreement, and reimbursement from the DOT, they've already they put it in writing, it will not be received until after July 1st, 2017. The grant amount of $1,049,106 can now be amended into the budget, and what we'll do, we'll record the expenditures on the project, and we will just book that as a receivable at the end of the year in the TDC financials. The second item, and it's in your expenditure detail in the beach maintenance land account. On January 26th, the BCC approved the contract to purchase property located in Inlet Beach. The total cost plus the settlement charges were $341,955. And in looking at the beach maintenance capital accounts, I believe there's sufficient budgetary authority available for this expense, so I don't believe any formal action will be needed to amend the budget at this time. So if you have any question about this or any other items, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? And just to comment, that was really a good deal on that lot. We were really blessed to get that. So no questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. So we don't have old business, but we could talk about the zip codes now. Maybe we could task the new director when he comes on to assign that to someone to check into that to see. I know it's going to be a major dealing with the federal, the post office is going to be probably major, but it is something we can bring to their attention again. So thank you. Thank you, Gary, for reminding me. Okay, the first item of business, John, the approval of the BCC for attached scope of services and to advertise RFP for advertising, marketing.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, John Irvin. We have expended our potential 4 years with the current agreement, which is, as you know, provided by services by Zender Communications. So we are required to go through this process. We have looked at the last content that was in the RFP and provided up-to-date numbers and statements. And then also what you have in your package is the scope of services. And we worked long and hard to make sure that was representative of what's happening today. And I think it is a really good encapsulation of the nitty-gritty on how and why and what we do. So with this materials and your recommendation, the BCC would then, of course, approve that, and then we would work with the Office of Finance to traffic that out onto the street to seek fiscal 17 services. Have any questions about any of the materials? I know if you read every word of the scope, you probably lost a few brain cells in the effort, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to go backwards. We were only going to go forwards with the services that we were receiving.
It is very thorough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions from the audience? Any comments from the audience on this agenda item? Okay. Any questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The next is the co-op marketing plan for approval.
Yes, this is the standard time of year that we take this forward. It is fiscal 17 strategies, but if we do not proceed with the plans, the amount of time that it takes to manage this and offer it to local partners is pretty extensive. And so to make deadlines that are coming up in the next fall, we have to go through this in advance of the full budget. So we have shared co-op only things in the big spreadsheet that you have, and we gave you one sheet, a little more than one sheet, I guess, summary of the fact that this is truly very similar to last year. It was very successful last year, I think everybody would say. So we haven't tried to reinvent something that's working. And the other thing to know about this is we shared with the marketing committee in April our current mix between TV, radio, print, and digital. And they gave us some good feedback, and the co-op plan and the media plan that you will see next time we're in front of you probably satisfies that marketing mix and the strategy that the committee looked at.
Okay, and this was already approved in the budget, right?
It will be in the next year's budget, but we are not really coming forward talking about the financial parts of it, just the strategy and the channels and the outlets that we're placing, because we have to make those decisions in advance of all of the dollars that'll be figured out in the fiscal 17.
Do we have any comments from the board?
Yes, John, let me
Yes,
ask
sir.
you, with regard to both these items we just talked about.
Yes.
Is there any statement of what our goals and objectives are with regard to tourism over the next 3-4 years, whatever it is? I mean, we're talking about hiring an advertising agency, be it Zender or someone else, and then a co-op marketing plan. And those are all good activities, necessary activities, but what is the overall goal in terms of what we're trying to do? As you know, and you've heard 100 times, a lot of people feel we're sort of maxing out on tourism. And so if the unstated goal or the assumption is that we just want to keep adding more and more and more and more
Right.
without trying to define it somehow,
Yes.
then we're going to drive off the cliff. So what is, let me shut up and ask.
No, it's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. I should have prefaced both of those, frankly, with that. I think the strategic planning that's gone on with Mr. Fenton, and some of you have probably spoken with him, in the near future will allow this organization to restate where we're at and where we're going for a lot of things. Obviously, as a marketing organization, significant amount would be here. But what I am confident in is these efforts over the years have continued to work at seeking where there's opportunity. Anybody that thinks that we're trying to put one more person, in this market in June, we don't spend any time on that. We're really looking to help find leads for opportunity times, which is how you see these co-op programs are built so that bed tax collectors can participate in a fall digital, can participate in print leads that are timed at certain points of the year to help the non-peak. Obviously, we know the economy is very, very healthy in the peak season, but not to be too dramatic, there's plenty of those hardworking businesses that are losing money at other times of the year just because of the dramatic swings. And so to try to level the 12 months of economy here is really what all of our efforts about. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't anything that we're going dark in the peak season. We still care about people wanting to spend what I think is an incredible amount of money here. The brand value will always be the way to the financial success for these businesses. Is really, it's about spending. We have the same amount of rental accommodations that we basically had for a couple years. The only way that these businesses are really progressing in the summer is spending. So we want to convince you that this is the best place to invest a lot of money for your leisure travel. And so really the plan, I think, does an amazing job of that, restating that in the strategic documents. I think you see that in the scope of the previous issue quite a bit, that talks about why and where.
Excuse me, John?
But yes, sir.
I think it's, 60% of it goes towards the shoulder seasons or the off-season in the strategic plan, but then there's also a certain percentage of people that don't return in the summertime that you want to always, make aware, and
Yes.
I can't remember the percentage of that, but
Well, right now, there's a 20% turnover still, even with a 96% approval rating, basically. Everybody wants to come back, but the reality is not all of us can come back because of life. And so we work extremely hard to replace the attrition with the best households we can find that are willing not only just to stay, but to shop and dine, and that's really where the health of this economy is. And so if we were, I would say that if we were to stop, you would really have to think long and hard about that 20% attrition. Is there anybody encouraging those folks to replace with a higher household income? And our household incomes have gone up incredibly. You know, 10, 15, 20%, which is, I think, the other magic, which is we're going out and targeting the top 11% of U.S. households. Not everybody. It's not shotgunning. It's very precision as we can be.
And I think y'all have done a wonderful job in getting families here, so.
We certainly have a couple right now. So
We do. I actually rode the beach last Thursday, but it was really neat to see so many families, and you know,
It is.
and I'm not against spring break kids, but you know, families is what it's all about. And there were some really nice spring break kids that were behaving. So.
Well, we don't have to look very far in our community to see how fortunate we really are that there will be challenges and there will be burdens, but we have it pretty good in the big picture of things because we're really seeking people who care about art galleries and chef's cuisine and eco-exploring, and that's a little different than nightclubs and some of the other attributes that are attractive to people.
Right. Any comments from the audience? Thank you. You've done a great job. Do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next agenda item would be partnership with the locally produced fishing series to appear on Sportsman Channel in the amount of $135,000.
Yes, this came to us through public submission, and they appeared at the last marketing committee with their proposal, and there was some lengthy debate. There was some definite enthusiasm for the creative aspects, and of course Jim is your representative there. And at the end of the day, the marketing committee tasked staff to continue to consider this opportunity as we would through normal diligence. And we've relied on our agency to, of course, assist us with assessing a media buy. And so you have a spreadsheet in your materials that tries to compare some of the TV that may be similar that we've done, and you have a short presentation. And Jack is here. So as part of the public submission on the agenda, he'd like to come forth and speak with you if that's okay with the chair.
Absolutely.
And there's a short sizzle video as well that we can share with you.
Before we go to that, I believe, Madam Chairman, on the last issue, we took a motion and a second, but I didn't hear a vote. If we could have a vote.
Yeah, so could we have a vote on that, on the last one? That would be the co-op. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Whispering it to you.
Oh, that's okay.
Good morning. How are y'all?
Good morning.
Hey.
Morning. I'm Jack Cole. I'm the owner of Real and Scripts Charters and the TV show. We're going to show a few seconds of a video here. Kind of shows what we do, and I'll let them roll that, and then I'll speak.
And I'm Justin Martin. I'm owner of Martin Outdoor Entertainment, which would be the production company for South Walton Escape, working for Jack.
We're going to try to plug this in. The local system has been a little fussy this morning with electronics, so bear with us if the audio is not as expected. We've also lost one computer already today, so hang in there.
I'm getting seasick.
We still have some audio troubles in the whole building at this point.
We don't shoot everything in slow motion.
I would suggest, Jack, maybe look at the slides and we'll let that spool and see if we can get it loaded once. Are the slides only available through the computer that we've lost? We've literally been shorted out twice today on the computer that's driving the slides. fact, do you want to at least tell them a little bit about what this content is?
Sure. Yeah, I'll let Justin speak on that. He's more to, we have it, we can pull it up and speak to it if we need to.
Given a little background, Jack, here's the boat owner. I'll let him discuss the background of his boat and his involvement in the area and everything else.
Carrie and I are lifelong residents of Walton County. We have several businesses here in Walton County. We started this a few years ago, probably about 4 years ago. We're going to be shooting it out of Baytown. It's just a charter industry that we really try to do something different. It's a luxury charter. It's not your average charter boat. We do some really cool stuff on it. We've been a very successful charter business, and we're going to bring it here to Walton County, and we're very, very excited about what we're doing.
It's a model that's been proven and been very successful here recently. And one of the things that we want to do with South Walton Escape, as far as the fishing goes, I believe that's something that in this area can be really maximized. A lot of people are going close to here, but in different counties and that sort of thing to spend their money when they're coming down for fishing. And I think that's something that can really benefit the shoulder seasons or the off-peak seasons and that sort of thing, but also in the show incorporating the other things that go with it. If you look over to some of the sample episodes where we may start out picking up a family from a local resort and then they arrive at a boat, Jack's boat, or we're focusing on one of the beach launch guys, or we may be doing inshore fishing. Kind of getting some of everything in this area to represent everybody. So you're showing them getting picked up at a resort. They go on a fishing adventure because at the end of the day, it is a fishing show. But then they arrive back and they're going to a restaurant. They're stopping and doing something fun, maybe something small like getting a caricature made. So it could be small businesses to big businesses to everything in between. At the end of the day, like I said, it is a fishing show, and that's what I think is so neat and pinpoint about this demographic. This show will run on Sportsman Channel, and by all accounts, industry standard, Sportsman Channel is the #1 place for outdoor hunting and fishing programming. In Martin Outdoor Entertainment, my company, that's what we specialize in, outdoor programming. We've been doing it for a little over 10 years, and been very successful in the past with it. We've been successful recently with the previous show that we did for Jack here pretty close by. And Jack's bringing his boat and wants to bring this show to you guys.
One cool thing about the Sportsman's Channel, it is the #1 interactive channel. That means that if people watch it, they're more inclined to do it than they are than any other channel, and that's why we've been offered other channels to move the show to, and we decided not to do that because it is the one network that when they watch it, they're more inclined to do it, and they do what they see when they come here. There's some of the national exposure. Look at some of the partners that we're working with. You'll see the social media that we're able to really broaden that up with some of our partners, so we're able to touch on that and expand that extensively. There's a page on that. The partnership details, we met with the committee. They wanted us to go back and sharpen our pencil, as Jim asked us to do, and we did that, and we've sharpened it. And if you look there, that is a title sponsorship that goes along with the name of the show and all the other partnership details. Some of the highlights are 2 30-second commercials, some billboards, the posts on social media, and stuff like that.
And that's in line with the industry standards of this type of package of being a title advertiser.
There's some sample episodes on the back that just gives you a pretty much a overall outline of how the show's going to go. And we're going to use some of our local guys where we can, some of our local captains, our local chefs, showing off what they can do and giving people so many options that we have all along Walton County that when they come here, they may not even know that they got to do.
So it's about taking this show and really emphasizing the outdoor adventures, the fishing adventures, the recreational fishing here. And then while we're doing that, being able to show off your resorts, your restaurants, your small businesses that are little niche things. And it's a really good platform, a really good demographics, good households, and they're really loyal. And it's an ability to be able to really impact those non-peak seasons, I believe.
Is there a way to tie in I mean, obviously, you've got to go through the Destin Pass
Yes, sir.
in Okaloosa, but is there a way to tie in, like when you're running, if you're going to the east, to tie in the community from the water? I mean, that's going to sell.
Absolutely.
We can tie in, yes, sir, we can tie in anything. We have the capabilities to tie in anything, yes, sir.
Do y'all ever allow your fishermen to catch their fish and then partner with a restaurant and let them cook it?
That's going to be our main goal, Ms. Jones, is to do what we call in this industry a hook and cook, to where they catch it, and then we're taking it to a restaurant, and then we're gonna let that guy show what he can do with that snapper, that grouper, that triggerfish, something neat that maybe that somebody can do at the house. You know, that maybe that's not on the menu,
Right.
but that they can do at the house.
Right. Do we have other questions?
I got a question, Madam Chairman. Jim, what did the committee, what did they see that made?
Actually,
stuck
I
out?
was a little bit surprised. Everybody was incredibly enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
The whole committee was. I think with the Emerald Show and the popularity that it brought, we all decided, and we in the committee were focused on beyond the beach activities and shoulder season. You know, we have a lot of conversations about those two items, and this brings a lot of potential to, you know, if you were talked about going up into the river and catching bass, or, you know, there's a lot of other fishing adventures and other adventures here besides just going through the Destin Pass. We have a whole fleet off of Grayton Beach who would love to have some exposure. And the fishing season actually kind of tails well with off-season activities. You know, it's not all in the peak of our season. You're talking about spring and fall, and being able to drive people to those shoulder seasons is definitely one of the goals. Again, everybody was really enthusiastic about it. We did not go through we didn't vet the quality of the video or the captains or the episodes or anything like that, but everyone unanimously voted to bring it to the board.
Yes, sir, Mr. North.
Jack, one question I have is that you have snapper, grouper, and a show. These are three different shows, I guess,
Yes,
what you're filming. And one snapper, one grouper, and one amberjack.
Yes, sir.
Jim's mentioned something about the river fishing or maybe
Yes,
bay fishing is what y'all were talking about.
Yes,
I know
sir.
that bay fishing is becoming very big.
Very big,
these
yes, sir.
days. So, and I notice it's a lot on the Sportsman's Channel. You'll see a lot of that in these bays and whatnot. And so, is that in?
Yes, sir. They were asking us to give just an outline of like 3 shows, and we've got some bay fishermen that we've already contacted that we're going to use, and we're going to do some episodes of showing them going up in there. We've already talked about some kayak fishing, some stand-up paddleboard fishing up in the bays. I've already made some arrangements with some people to show some of that activity. And then, of course, our beach launchers. I know just about every captain there, and those guys are unbelievable. What they do, how they do it, blows my mind. I would never want to try to launch a boat and what they do. But it's going to be cool, you know, so we'll use some of our local captains to do this. Not everything is focused on me and my boat. It's the star of the show is the county, all of us.
And there'll be episodes as well where we'll show offshore fishing and inshore fishing. So there'll be a mix probably in the vast majority of the shows. Just to kind of, this goes back to the attention span thing for the viewer. If you could change it up and show more things more often, you retain viewership.
So it looks like you were out of Destin Harbor there, taking those pictures out of there.
All the video would have shown. We shot video out of Baytown already. Yeah, that was a previous show that was very successful, and we've been asked to move over here, and so we've brought it over here. We just use that kind of as a sizzle reel to show you what we can do. Yes, sir. Nothing will be shot out. Everything will be shot out of Walton County.
So how many shows are we talking about?
There'll be 78 total airings, 13 episodes that run 3 times a week for 13 weeks, and then they rerun those 13 episodes 3 times a week. So that's 26 weeks, 3 times a week, 78 airings.
So 13 shows is what you're saying?
13 originals, yes, sir.
And it says here that we'll have, I forget what the word is, but a minor presence in it or something to that effect.
Are you looking on the partnership details page?
Right. can't find it now.
What
Describe what you mean by minor,
What-
whatever the adjective is you
What
use.
we have done and extensively talked with John is they're gonna help us with the resorts and the restaurants. And then they get their 2 minutes of airtime that they want to show in that. So then we're gonna work with John and his guys to focus on the resorts and the restaurants.
So the restaurants and the resorts would pay for their portion, their
No, sir.
advertising?
No, sir.
That would be included?
Yes, sir.
John, have you talked to any of the restaurants or bed tax collectors about this?
Have not at this point until we got some direction. Any effort that we would make like this, we would follow the same procedure that we would use with Southern Living or Cooking Channel or Golf Channel to make sure that we're being very judicious and balanced and represent the entire coastline and the attributes which we already are committed to. There's certain things that we celebrate and there's certain things that we wouldn't. And so there'd be a lot of effort that would have to go into that.
What do you see as the largest benefit to the bed tax collectors?
I think some of what you gathered from the marketing committee, that it's something that's different and an opportunity. Anytime your product looks good and is appealing and can capture attention in this day and age with the way content is, that's the upside of it. I don't think we have any hard statistics to fall back on about boating and fishing that drives visitation. In the research that we do have, that is certainly something people have a passion for. We like doing it, but it doesn't elevate to the level of some of the more obvious things like straight culinary and straight beach and wine events and those sort of things. So we're in a little bit of an unknown in some of those areas.
In the state of Florida, boating and fishing exceed golf and recreational spending.
Last-
Share with you, that's all I can say.
The last number I heard was about 17 billion fishing industry brings to the state of Florida. So that's, and if Destin is probably the biggest fishing fleet in the state of Florida.
Yes,
is
sir.
my understanding. So
Yes, sir.
that alone, just the overflow from that, if we can develop something here, that would be a good, we're doing everything else. We're going ecotourism. The fishing's something we're lacking in.
And we've already done that with some partnerships, able to retain some of those people to keep them in our county. To where when they get off, if they go that way and they fish on those boats, when they get off, they're going to stay at those restaurants, shop in those shops. We can't capture all of them by any means. We're not capable of doing that, but we can retain some of them with doing that out of Baytown, and that'll keep these people here, give them an option of not driving across the line.
Yeah.
So it's about 10,300 and change per episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of opinions, but I don't see a whole lot of facts. Everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's going to be great, it's going to be great. I'd like to see some evidence first from the bed tax collectors as to whether or not they think this is a good idea and how they would integrate it, and then come back to us and present the idea. But this has a lot of sizzle to it. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but I think you're asking us to make a decision based on emotion and hearsay and feeling, but not a whole lot of substance. So I would not shelve the idea, but I would say we ought to do some more homework before we come back and make a decision.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
Well, what kind of, besides, and this is the first I'm hearing of this one, but what other kind of homework are we looking to do?
Well,
Because they got facts in here, and I'm not trying to argue with them, just saying, it's showing the stats, it's showing the demographics.
I think one thing I heard Art say was, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time with it too, and I'm not even a bed tax collector. I'm not about more people for the sake of more people, certainly. I'm not after trying to find a demographic maybe we haven't explored as much. I'm not about that either. I'm trying to understand how the bed tax collectors, and specifically Walton County, I can certainly see how Okaloosa and Destin could benefit from this, but I'm having a hard time understanding that connection with our restaurants and our lodging, and how, certainly that's a sport. Fishing is a sport I'm not arguing with, but I haven't made that connection yet.
I would say it's a huge sport here, And if you've ever caught a fish with your child, you kind of get it, you know. And people will come here to, and I'm not arguing for or against, I'm just saying, I have a charter boat and a restaurant, and I see those people, and they are coming here, and when they come here, they are spending money for bed nights, to be here, to go fishing, to have that experience, whether it's on the beach or on the bay, or I don't think it's any different than the reason that people are coming here. And I think one of the reasons that the marketing committee was excited about it is that the fishing season dovetails with off-season. It's not just a peak season event. And so as a small business owner, I understand, and what John said is that we struggle in the off-season. I know that they're on our beaches, tromping across our privately owned property and leaving their beer bottles during the season, but there's another 8 months where a lot of businesses struggle to make it to the next year. And that's where the marketing committee has been tasked to focus and spend these dollars that we have to bring people in to bed tax, to collect bed tax in the off season. And this is I think a good product to do that.
Let me say this. In my business, I have a lot of requests from my clients to go fishing.
Yes, sir.
Whether it's deep sea or bay fishing like we were talking about before. They don't bring their boats, but they'd like to know where to go. So, and there are a few, and I imagine a lot of the charter boats here in this area are pretty full. So, I mean, if it's another segment, I think that we don't go after enough, whether it is getting more to come or letting them know that we're here.
Yes, sir.
And that we have that availability. I think that's it, because otherwise you see just a few charters advertised, but not as many out there that are known that take you fishing.
Ms. Pam, I'd like to address kind of what you said. That was a good question, how we can do this. I think we all know that from now until July, you know, everybody's hopping and going. What we want to do is focus for those resorts and those bed tax people you're speaking of in the off seasons where they struggle. So if you're wondering what they would think, I think if I was a bed tax collector and you come and say, hey, we're going to do this and we want to focus on your off season, what are your thoughts on it? We're trying to push more people there. I think I know what that answer would be.
So you air these episodes during the off season?
Yes, ma'am. It starts in January and it goes to the 1st of June. So it's focused on those peak seasons. I mean, not the peak seasons. It's focused on those shoulder seasons. And a majority of the fishing that we're going to do is going to be in those shoulder seasons to show, hey, now we're going to shoot some, don't get me wrong, because we have to because of Florida, the way they do their, what's legal to catch. So we want to focus more on those shoulder seasons. So I would think that any bed tax collector that said, hey, we're going to spend some dollars and we're going to showcase our shoulder seasons, I think they would have a very good feeling about it.
As a bed tax collector, a small bed tax collector, my mind starts working, how can I benefit from this?
Yes, sir.
Specifically. And what Jim said about Grayton Beach, and we have a fleet in Grayton Beach, and I collect taxes in Grayton Beach, so I see that this could be beneficial to me. I see that I could, do an email blast. Hey, this, watch this show. This talks about this. I could see ways that I could market from this effort. So
yes, sir.
Just launching off the beach is pretty unique.
It's very cool. If nobody's ever seen it done.
Yeah. If you've ever caught a striped bass in the river in January, it's a totally different thing. When our fishing captains struggle more than 8 months out of the year here because they only get business traditionally when the tourists are here.
Mr. Tate, we want to work with you. We want to say, hey, you're doing this. We want to help you also. When our website is up, we can do that and partner and do stuff like that.
I just think it's a winner for the people that come here. If you have a family and you come in and you're going to go fishing and spend time with your family, would you rather be here? Would you rather be in Destin? See, I think if you take all the things that we have to offer, that's not just about the fishing trip. I think that's exactly. I think that's the way we should be spending our dollars. I mean, I'm for this. I'd say if we're ready to make a motion, I make a motion that we invest this money.
I think if we go ahead with this program, the people in Destin ought to send us a thank you note, because I think what we're going to do is drive business to Destin.
No, sir, I want to tell you that our goal, my goal and Justin's goal, is to focus so much on Walton County that you forget about that county.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but the people nonetheless know that the fleet is over there, a huge fleet, and so they may come and stay here, which is good for our bed tax collectors, but we're really spending money to send people to Destin to go fishing.
I will say that my boat was over there, as his would. My biggest complaint of my customers is the hour and 45-minute drive back to Walton County that they have to sit in traffic, and they said if there was any way we could get around that, we would be back. So actually, I lose customers from Walton County because of the drive back. So
One boat isn't going to change that, or a couple of boats isn't going to change that.
you're right, it won't, but it would be a start.
So at Baytown, how many boats do we have?
I do not know right now.
I mean, just a rough estimate.
Little Lucky is the only boat that I know of right now that actually charters out of there. There are a ton of boats there that may take people fishing.
Right.
But I think this is a good start to capture some of them.
Most of the boats in Baytown are privately owned. They're not fishing boats.
Yes, sir.
And we're also partnering with our restaurants when when they cook the fish, so it's kind of bigger than just, so I'm not concerned about the Destin thing.
So you're saying more of an experience because it's going to go to the restaurants too. We're going to put that into
It could
the
be
package,
zip
so-
lining. It could show them, when we have ideas that we've thought with John, them biking through our forest, the family biking through our forest. I mean, there's so many opportunities, but attach eyes, you show those big fish and stuff like that. And we have some local celebrities that we all know live along the coast that have said, hey man, if I'm down there and my time works out, I'd love to come on and be on some episodes and help you out.
I want to go the day Luke Bryan goes.
There might be a line for that.
How do we?
I'm teasing. I get sick.
That's a good idea. I could charge.
I get really sick when I go out. I'm not interested in going, even with Luke Bryan. I'm just
I'm
teasing.
sure if he was on there, all that would go away.
Well,
How did we arrive at $135,000?
Sir?
How did we arrive at $135,000?
That is your average for the title sponsorship, for the name, South Walton Escape, and for all the stuff that is given at the partnership details. This is the industry standard for a title sponsorship in our industry.
And John, how do you calculate the value added of doing something like this?
It's hard because you're really having a great discussion about the pros and cons of the content, and I think there's plenty of pros. There's some cons. The numbers is something I think you guys also expect us to do our best on, and we tried to do that in the document. And so one of the challenges is, this wasn't a budgeted opportunity, and if you just want to make it one direct comparison, the Emerald Lagasse cooking segment, it's about 10x in potential viewership at notably less money because, and this isn't fair in the consideration of the 135, because those are programs that we've participated in that were co-opted by Visit Florida. So when the opportunities came, it was not a very difficult financial decision to participate with Visit Florida on those. So we don't have any directs, I would say, in fairness to the ask.
The show is going to air in 2017, and I don't know accounting-wise how the government does it, but if you only have about a $40,000 cost in 2016, you can budget the rest in 2017.
You would have to, yes.
That $40,000 cost, could you accrue it to 2017? I don't know if that's.
I believe the approach would have to be, with approval from the BCC, is to look at dollars that are either unanticipated savings or available to spend, and so we would have to do some paperwork. But even though it's unbudgeted, I think the funds could be found for the BCC to consider this previously unbudgeted expense for the 40 that you would need in this fiscal year.
Well, John, why don't you just put it into the 17 budget then, as part of the overall plan?
And Jack can correct me if I'm
That's
wrong.
what I'm getting at is can you take that 40 and accrue it into January or something like that? You pay it.
Well, aside from the accrual part of it, I'm just saying, make this part of your media plan for 2017 rather than having it as an ad hoc.
And that would certainly be a more traditional approach to an opportunity that was, considered to be worth pursuing. I think because of the timelines you're talking in production and having to secure the space, that's what's driving the bullet that you see that's 40,000, which is that's what gets Sportsman Channel secured for the day parts and for the schedule. And so that's something that you would be hard to push off. You would basically be bouncing an entire another season.
So you have a motion, do you want it
Yeah, first of all, I don't want to make this sound like this is about me or my business. I just think as a small bed tax collector, whether you have a house or a hotel or a bed and breakfast, that it would be to our benefit. So I make a motion that we go ahead and move on this, whichever way the dollars make sense, whether we can accrue it or whatever you have to do to make it work. But let's not wait. We always wait for everything, it seems, and I don't think it's necessary to wait for this.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
No.
So that would be 3. So it passed. Now, do we need to discuss more about the money and what we're going to, like, are we going to ask the BCC for the 40,000, to approve the 40,000 and then?
I think what I heard in there is that staff would need to address whatever funding opportunities would exist to take that to the BCC.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so it passed. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck with your program.
Commissioner, can you explain, again, private accounting might be a little different government-wise, that 40,000, if it's a product for 17, couldn't you defer the 40,000 even though if it's paid in 16 to 17?
John, would you address that, please?
I think there's.
That's how we can do it.
I think being that the budgets are pretty hard line from year to year, that does exist with capital projects and some other things. But if there's funds in 16 that can pay 40, I think funds in 16 should pay the 40 if the BCC approves it. And media development, and there's some other categories that we would go and do some math and find a solution for that. I think that it exists.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next agenda item is request recommendation to the BCC for funding continuation of wayfaring safety signage at beach accesses.
Yes, thanks. Most of you have seen some family of this signage. The one thing that with all of our efforts over the years to rebrand them, to consolidate some significant information system clutter that we've had with 4, 5, 6 signs trying to tell you to be safe. We're very happy with what's at regional accesses, the much larger versions of this. This is the little brother. And we currently do not have information systems at the neighborhood accesses on the top side. So Josh and Brian have done well by finding a manufacturer that will produce these custom for us that are very, you wouldn't know that it's a completely different product from the ones that exist. And we have the ability to, with funds in the improvements other than buildings, be able to get 50 of these on neighborhood accesses. Obviously, each one would have a different 911 address. So there's some legwork to be done with the staff, and then we would put out for bid for the vinyl and aluminum. That's just a sample here. But I think that's the last piece of the wayfaring that we've been working on for many years. Good news is we thought maybe it might be as much as $200,000 last year and prior years for all turnover with branding. We were able to do the existing wayfaring that you see in county right now for about 60. So last year that money went to reserve. I'm not proposing that that's necessarily where we fund this continuing effort because we do have fiscal $16, but we would very much like to get these out into the community as soon as possible.
Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the audience? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you for all that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Okay, next we have a recommendation to the BCC regarding the branded water tower in Sandestin. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, council members. At our last meeting in February, we took up a discussion of the 2 water towers, and I believe your direction was for us to go out and do some research, primarily on the Sandestin water tower, and so that's what the lion's share of our work has been in that regard. What we found out since that time is in 2012, we entered into an agreement with South Walton Utilities, whereby we paid them $144,500 for a 10-year agreement with the water tower and the paint job. As I said, that was in 2012, so that was 4 years ago. There's 6 years left in that 10-year agreement. We've had some discussion with Sandestin, who has expressed an interest in essentially refunding us the remainder of that 10-year agreement. And if you were to prorate that, it would be at about $86,000, $87,000. And then Sandestin take and enter into an agreement with South Walton Utilities. I will tell you that also the marketing committee took up the issue at their last meeting, March 1st or 2nd, and the marketing committee was in favor of retaining the water tower and repainting it with a new logo. Some other facts that we have for you is we have asked for some quotes on what it would cost were you guys to decide to retain it and place the new brand on it. We've received a couple of quotes. One would be for just wrapping the logo around the tank and maintaining the base color coat. Would come at a cost of $53,627. And then to fully repaint the tank itself and the logo at a cost of $79,000. So we've got two options here. One is to essentially abandon the agreement and allow Sandestin to enter into an agreement with South Walton Utilities, or we can put forth, the funds to repaint the tank and put our new logo on it.
Okay, do I have discussion from the board? There's two options we have on the table.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things we can discuss about this. First of all, we can't unfry the egg that was made 4 years ago, but as a resident of Sandestin, I will say that this is probably the biggest waste of money that TDC has ever engaged in. You cannot see what it says up there in script. It is unhealthy or unsafe, rather, to drive along 98 and look up at that water tower and see whatever is written out there. The other day, just for the fun of it, I decided to do a little feet in the street research, and so I parked my golf cart by the by the north, or the south gate, south entrance to Sandestin, and I stopped people walking by and I asked them about the water tower. Interesting what I found out. I talked to 27 people in the course of about 30 minutes. 17 people had no idea what was on the water tower. 6 said they guessed that Sandestin was written on the water tower. 1 said the Hilton. There you go. You got a little free advertising right there. 3 said nothing was on the water tower, and 1 said South Walton something or other is on there. That person happened to live in Pine Ridge and has been watching that sign. So out of 27 people, no one really knew what was on that sign, and so changing it to something else.
It's hard to read in that script.
Sure, it's hard to read. Plus, it's in light blue. Everybody knows how well light blue shows up on a tan background. So. But to me, this is a horrendous waste of money, regardless of what's put up there. For the TDC, I think it's a waste of money. To say that welcome to South Walton when people are driving by, I just don't see this as a good investment of our money.
Okay, any other discussion?
If I understand, then we can get 87 grand back if we just give it to Sandestin, so to speak.
That is correct. That's been my conversation with Sandestin. If you were to prorate the remainder of the agreement, it would equate to about $86,000 and change.
But we'd have to spend at least $50-some thousand at least just to put the new logo on.
To put the new logo on, you're looking at a minimum of $53,000, and I think according to the marketing committee, were they to do that, their choice was to fully repaint the tank, which is a $79,000 spend.
And speaking as a representative of the marketing committee, not necessarily personally, if you even looking at the pictures, the South Walton logo was rebranded for a reason, and that is because you cannot read it. If you look at the bottom left, it's pretty visible, and if you look at water towers across the country, they're pretty iconic and are used in marketing continuously, and I'm there's also a reason that Sandestin would love to have it back and have their logo on it, or the Hilton. And so that's why the committee agreed that it is a good in-market branding tool. We're discussing spending or have approved spending money on billboards and other in-market branding opportunities, and so it's consistent with that train of thought and branding who we are and rebranding with the logo. I'm actually,
Jim?
and I meant to ask the last, but I'm also interested in what Zender their perception or opinion of it would be, if that's prudent.
Would someone like to speak to that from Zender, please?
Good morning,
Good
Council.
morning.
I'm Jeff Zender. I think that our opinion would be that the availability of billboards and branding for the TDC within South Walton is very limited and very expensive, especially on the western end. So our belief is that this does present a tremendous opportunity to have that placeholder to let folks know coming into Miramar Beach that you have entered Walton County. So we are in support.
Didn't we, months ago, come to the realization that people identify to the 16 individual beaches, and then they can tag that into South Walton? I mean, people are they know more about Sandestin or Seaside or Great Beach. So,
But the goal was to actually brand South Walton, not to the individual beach communities as part of South Walton, not vice versa.
yeah.
And that's the objective, to let folks know that have entered Miramar Beach that you, and Sandestin, that you're now in Walton County.
But I'm sure Sandestin wouldn't mind if Sandestin was switched with South Walton, and couldn't it just be South Walton welcomes you to Sandestin because that's the region, that's the area?
Oh, Gary, Kitty Whitney is here, and I think she can speak to that issue.
Pam, did you want to make a comment before Kitty comes up?
I just wanted to say two things about the water tower. Where it's placed is smack dab in the middle of Sandestin, so you just assume, I would assume, if I couldn't read it as I was driving by, that it would say Sandestin. The second thing is, I drive by there so many times, and I don't look up to see the water tower, and you can't see it if you're on either side of it, so that you have a range of vision far enough away that you could read it. It's not I don't think it's a good visible tool to use for in-market branding.
Go ahead, Tim.
Madam Chair, Jim and Art and Pam make some good comments or good points. It's currently tan or brown, so you put the blue logo we have on there, it's going to be difficult to see either way. The tower's sitting up on a hill, so then you got another 25 feet above that you got to look up. It is kind of dangerous, but it's a nice logo, and it says South Walton. You know, we have an issue with Destin and Sandestin, or Destin or South Walton. Maybe if they put Sandestin on the tower, then they'll know exactly where Sandestin is, and Sandestin is in South Walton, which most people know. The fact of the matter is that you know, it's real. I just think it's a lot of it's hard to say. I'm right in between, in the middle. But you know, normally you'll be able to see it from a distance, and you, like Pam said, you don't see it until you're really right up on it. And if you look at it far away, you can't see anything up there. So I don't know. I think that's some money that we could save and put it towards the other water tower that's on 331 that needs to be lit up at nighttime because you can't see that, and work on that logo if that's the case, because that's an entry point into our South Walton area. So anyway, just a thought.
Kitty, did you have some comments you'd like to make? Come up. And it's good to see you. You look great.
Thanks. Good to see you too. I'm back. The podium's always a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm a lot more casual and I don't always follow all the regulations and the rules.
Just pretend you're talking just to me.
Okay, cool. I'm Kitty Whitney. I bought my first home in Sandestin 16 years ago. I'm a big fan and a big ambassador of South Walton in the community. I was the chamber executive for a couple of years in 2010 and 11. And then I broke off to work with Sandestin, and I run the real estate department, so I'm the broker and director there, and of course have some crossover obligation to Sandestin operations. In addition to that, Todd and I own some businesses in the village. So when I look at it from the regulatory and who needs to spend money on what, I just back up for a minute and I go, all right, we have worked together collaboratively for a long time trying to make South Walton and the 16 communities known. It used to be 15. And at one point, it was to eat your beach. So we've been through a whole lot of gamut trying to all identify where we are. To this day, when I was at the chamber, we built, John remembers, we built this piece, South Walton, and it goes through to define the details of every small community because that's what we hone in on. And I use this piece to this day. When anybody buys real estate or a rental investment unit, I teach them about South Walton, and I explain why they are paying an Okaloosa gas bill and live in South Walton, and where they go to get their driver's license, and why they don't have a city government, but they have a county government. So we do spend a lot of time and effort, whether it's in my job personally, my businesses with my husband, or just being a resident, and my neighbor says, what does that mean? So yeah, we do have an ongoing challenge to ever convey that message. When I look at the TDC's mission statement, it says, the mission of the TDC is to direct and manage the activities that will strengthen the brand. And then the latter part of that says to increase the tourism economy. The latter part to that, to me, seems to be the absolute worthy goal. To me, the first part is the catalyst. So there's no way we can get away with just having South Walton or just having Sandestin. I feel like anytime Rosemary Beach screams Rosemary Beach, they should say in South Walton. And the same with Seaside, and the same with Sandestin. The other thing that I certainly beg on is to make it easy for the end user. They still do look at Sandestin or Seaside. They're not necessarily always honing in on that South Walton yet. So I just say, please don't let me have to say any more to my relatives that are coming to town. Turn by the upside down green onion, or turn by the, now I can say, if we proceed, turn where it says Sandestin and South Walton. I think we need to stick to the community base and make it easy for the people to get here. Once they're here, we can teach them what the rest of it means. But we need an opportunity for them to use it as a street sign. The traffic on 98 is bad enough. We want them to see that sign from way back to just be able to put their blinker on and turn in and not be doubting where they are in our community.
Yeah. Font and color will help do all that. You're right, because it's not the right color and right
It needs
font
to be
right
the
now.
right color and the right visibility, and it needs to say that Sandestin is in South Walton, and you're coming to all of it. Any other questions?
Any other comments from, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Kitty, did you mean to say that in terms of the water tower, you would want to brand the water tower Sandestin in South Walton?
I like the idea that you have both names there. I can't see Sandestin very well, maybe because I'm 51 and I don't have my glasses on, but I can't see it very well. So yes, I'm proposing that Sandestin's name weigh in strongly for the end user to see it, but we don't dare leave off the mention that it is in Sandestin, in South Walton. I think it's a great partnership, and then we have to keep collaborating that way. We're all on the same team, and the only way we're going to get everybody to understand that is if we keep progressing through that.
But to your point, the people identify with the 16 individual communities.
That's it. They do, Gary, to this very day. And remember, too, every single one of our individual communities still embed the words Destin and Panama City Beach and all those other search engine optimization words to be certain that some kind of way we're going to capture them. But we will get them here. And the marketing department here has done a phenomenal job of trying to tag all that up together and call it what it is. But we have to make it easy for them to find us and get here.
I'm not sure our demographics eyes can read all of that in the time it takes to.
Then I would ask for Sandestin. So I can say, turn at the sign where it says you're coming into Sandestin.
The marketing committee agreed that the verbiage at the top was insignificant and really shouldn't be there. It should just be South Walton and the icon, if we were to go that way.
So you're saying Sandestin is willing to go ahead and pick up the 6 years on the lease?
Absolutely.
And to pay for the repainting?
I think we would love to share the painting if we can manage to have both names on there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Kitty.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? What's the pleasure of the board?
There's a,
We
somebody.
have one more.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry,
Diane Pickett.
come on up, please.
I want to talk to you about some other things a little bit later on, but for the moment, I will just leave you with a joke. You give us that $87,000 for Defuniak Springs, and we'll paint the northern part of South Walton.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, board, it's in your court now.
I'd like to make a motion that we have Sandestin move forward with branding the logo and agree to talk about the possibility of sharing the cost of having South Walton on the brand, or on the tank rather.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
What about the 87 grand? Are we getting that back?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, for the discussion purposes, we're gonna get 87,000 back, right, Art?
Right.
Okay.
Excuse me, Clay. Do I need to abstain from that because I'm kind of the Hilton in Sandestin, should I? Or I just want to be...
The agreement's being presented to us by whom specifically? Who is the proposing party? Is it Hilton? Is it Sandestin?
No, Sandestin, SDI.
Okay, in that case, you're directly employed by?
The Hilton. I'm not even...
No.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. And I
so-
second the motion.
That's why I walked through that clarification, so everybody knows all the connections. It does not inure to your special private gain or loss or a business associate directly of yours.
At least a clarification, it should say, rather than Sandestin, SDI. Is that right, Kitty? Sure. All right, so SDI.
We can work out the contract documents.
Yeah.
I think the intent of the board
But
is
just in
clear.
terms of the motion, it's SDI that would be paying the county or TDC, whatever, the remainder, whatever it is, it's approximately 87,000.
86,000 and some change,
Yeah, whatever-
86.4,
whatever
I
it is.
think, or 86.
And then, in other words, that relieves us of 6 years of obligation. And then we could discuss
Then they take the-
possibility of an arrangement regarding the use of the word South Walton on the tank.
Well,
But that's to be worked out.
So if
They're not
paying
gonna
us-
do that.
No. Yeah,
Well, that's to be worked out, that's what I said. Either SDI pays for it, or we can discuss the possibility of our cooperating with
So
them
how
on
does
that.
that get worked out? Are we going to have to deal
Stand.
with it again and then that's?
So if I hear you right, Mr. Miller, we would negotiate with SDI on some sort of design which would incorporate South Walton into that, and then some sort of cost share.
All right, let me rephrase it then, for the sake of clarity and making a decision. Let me make the motion that SDI move forward with negotiating with you in terms of the remainder of the contract, and they would assume the obligation for the repainting, however they wanted to go. If they want to come back to us at some later point and discuss some sort of sharing, we can do that. But for now, let's just say the burden is on them to repaint it.
Okay.
So that's my motion. Okay.
So we have a motion, and
One more question, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure I'm clear, Art. I'm good with it, but it's kind of, when you do a transfer, if they're going to buy out a contract, they're going to take this contract and they're going to own it at that point in time. So
Correct.
they're the ones going to make the decision. Basically, that's really where we are.
That's where we are, and what I just said was that any repainting costs would be between SDI and South Walton Utilities.
Right.
Do we need a motion first to say whether we want to repaint it or not?
No, you do not need a motion on that. The motion is effectively to assign the contract, or our rights under the contract with South Walton Utilities to STI, in exchange for them paying us the remainder of monies that we advanced under that contract. So they're basically going to pay us the prorated difference in the amount of the contract left for our remaining rights. We're basically selling them the contract. It's an assignment. So that's what's done. If we do that, we are necessarily saying we do not wish to rebrand. Now, however, if somebody wants to make that motion, there are rules of procedure that would allow somebody to make a substitute motion, and among others, I'm sure the chairman can navigate us through that if somebody makes those. But they're basically exclusive motions. Because once you assign the contract, we have no rights to it, unless you build in a specific provision that the assignment would be with some term. Considering that's not what I understand has been proposed, that would be a continued negotiation.
I would say like you, to make the motion to sell in the remaining 6 years at the $86,700 with the stipulation that they at least put South Walton on the tower somewhere. I mean,
No, I don't think we want to, no, I wouldn't do that to them. It's their decision. Once we sell them the assignment, it's their decision what they want to do. What I said was that, for sake of clarity, that it's now in their court. If they want to come back and say, and talk about the possibility of using South Walton, that's a separate decision altogether. But for now, the motion is for them to buy out the remaining 6 years or whatever it is on the contract, and the responsibility to repaint is entirely theirs at this point. That's the motion.
Okay, and was that your second? Do you agree that's your second to the motion?
only with the caveat if they could put South Walton on there.
Do I have someone else?
That's not the motion. Can't have it both ways, Gary.
Can I make one more point? Yeah, one more point. Gary, we can't see it now in script, and if you put a little bit of, and I know Sandestin, I know Mr. Becknell's probably going to want to put Sandestin, and Kitty in real estate over there wants to see the big word Sandestin. So,
I would agree with that too,
yeah, so we're not going to see much of South Walton on there. It's going to go back to where we are now.
It's one, we either turn it over or we maintain it. And my comment would be, for the record, that as a part of the marketing committee, that we think it is a good idea to maintain it, and for all the money, this is a very small amount of money in the big picture of all the money that we have spent to brand and to make South Walton, put South Walton on the map. And so that's the reason that we agreed that we thought we should maintain it, and that it would be a mistake for us to let it go, because we don't have any way to say you have to put South Walton on it. It's theirs or ours.
Okay, so we have a motion to basically turn it over. Do we have a second that agrees with his motion?
Second.
Okay, second. And then, remember, this is a recommendation to the board, so there might be discussion there as to the future of this tower. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Same sign. One.
Opposed.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While, like I said, the lion's share of our work was specifically targeted to the Sandestin Tower, we did at the last meeting also discuss the regional tower next door. So if the council would like to consider and maybe give us some direction as far as moving forward with something on that. Like I said, we didn't really do any work on that. However, I believe the last paint job on that tower was $7,000. So what's the wishes of the council with that tower?
You can only really see that tower going north, so when you're leaving, right?
You can actually see it going south. However, if those magnolias continue to grow, you won't.
Yeah.
You won't see it very well at
I think
all.
we should look into the landscaping and lighting and get some options on it for sure. I think it's a great entrance to our community, but I'd like to know the price.
There needs to be a whole sense of arrival there, beyond just the tower there.
Okay, and that's a good point, Ms. Frost. Later today, we actually have a meeting with DOT, who has dedicated some funding for this corridor and the entry into South Walton, and so maybe we can incorporate some of that into that discussion.
And Stan, if I may add, I think if we're going to go to the trouble of repainting that and making sure it's visible, we ought to look at lighting as well, because we miss an awful lot of hours during the day or the night when people drive by there and don't see anything.
Yep.
All of that's owned by Regional Utilities, is that correct?
It is.
Okay. Do we have a formal agreement with them, or what is the arrangement with them?
Not to my knowledge.
So it's just sort of a handshake? Okay, we might want to codify that. Wouldn't you say, Mr. Atkinson?
It depends on whether or not we're actually spending any money at the time, or whether they're spending their money to do it. Technically, we don't have a mark to license them, so it's obviously having a written agreement would help future boards understand what it is, but to the extent that if they agreed to paint it and put our mark on their water tower at their expense, They, I believe, in the past have said they didn't need an agreement because they were doing it at their own consideration and will without an agreement from us or need for our approval. So they may not specifically want an agreement to allow them to do.
All right, I was not aware that they paid for the paint job. I was thinking
and
that
I
we
would
had
have
paid for it.
I'd have to go back and look at that, but I assume we're referring to repainting. Whatever's happened in the past has happened. So,
Okay.
we
But
can't
if
really get back
if we wind up paying, let's say, $10,000 to repaint it, then at our
we would need at
expense,
least
then we
a
need to
letter
have
of
an
a
agreement.
memorandum of understanding,
Right.
similar to what we have with South Walton, if we expend any money.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
But you might as well go for the lights as well if you're going to go that direction.
Okay, we'll work on something and bring it back to you.
Thank you.
I want to jump ahead real quick and introduce to you Jason Cutshaw. He's our new Director of Administration. He's been on with us about 3 weeks now. He comes to us from Topsail State Park as the park manager there, and I'm going to let him introduce and talk about the next item.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
Council, I'm here to talk to you today about the Topsail project. And it's a project that I was close to last year with it. And some of the highlights of the project was some of the statistics. They saw a total of 3,460 vehicles were provided parking for last year during this time frame. And in the project, they paid out $20,000. $20,843 was paid out of the $25,000 that was allotted for it. That was statistically, and you'll see in your packets with the information from last year, that was an increase the first 10 days of 91% in visitation with that parking there. It's a parking lot size is about 105 parking spaces, and the year prior to, on the 4th of July, I noticed that we were maybe a quarter full on the 4th of July, and I was like, there's opportunities here. And so last year, the county and the TDC combined together with the park and created the program, the memo of understanding, and it showed some success. And
Jason, let me interrupt you. Maybe it's in here somewhere. I don't see it. What does it break down to per car?
Per car, it was total vehicles, and that's multiple passengers and single passengers, was 3,460 individual cars. And I do have a secondary sheet, such as, and I'll give you an example of like the July invoice, 2 to 8 people vehicle was $6,428. That was 1,152 cars.
So about $6 a car is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. With the 2 to 8, it's $6 per car, and for a single vehicle, it's $4 per car.
Okay.
So, yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Any other questions from the board?
If we do this, are we planning on doing some kind of signage and saying that it's, I didn't see that last year, which I think to me would increase it triply. If you just had some signage that says entrance here available for, guests or locals.
Absolutely, Ms. Frost. That was one of the things last year that I had written down in my notes with the project. I was like, the advertising. I made some smaller signs, that welcome to the park. Fee is paid by Walton County, on behalf of the TDC, welcome to, so forth and so on. But you're exactly right. If with larger signage, I believe that would be the cog in the wheel that would make it even more successful this year. Absolutely.
Any other comments? Any comments from the audience? What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion that we accept Jason's
I'll
proposal.
second it.
Have a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Updates from Taylor Engineering.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. Matt Trammell, Taylor Engineering. A little bit of old news here. I just wanted to bring you full circle on where we are with our HSDR project. This is just an update from the BCC's March 8th meeting. As you all know, the board and council had elected to go issue the easements last summer. They were returned to the county attorney's office. The county attorney had compiled those. We sent the results to the Corps of Engineers. They prepared the maps and the metrics. The final results were presented to the BCC early March. We'd have loved to come back and present them to the council, but the direction of the board was to bring those back as soon as we could, so that's what we did. In total, there were approximately a little over 1,000 parcels. Of all of the easements sent out, we received a little over 500, somewhere right around 50%. Of those received, 87.5% were no, and 12.5% were yes. This left the board with a very difficult decision. the Corps of Engineers did not feel there was a viable project, so the board elected to table the project for now. So that's currently where we are with the HSDR. The second item, the vibrocoring, as you can imagine, the board had elected to reject those bids. That was to do some additional sand sampling within the targeted borrow area. We rejected those bids, shelved those as well. And then I just wanted to set the record straight on the DEP permit status. The DEP permit was submitted by the Corps, I think the summer of 2014. It was deemed complete December 2014, and this was for the full county-wide project, county line to county line. The Corps was under a lot of pressure to have the DEP issue that permit. The DEP is under a lot of pressure from the governor. Once a permit comes in, they need to make action, do their assessment, make final action, and issue that permit. Well, over the past year plus, the Corps had been submitting these waivers of time clock. Well, give us another 6 months, give us another 3 months. It finally got to the point to where the DEP had given the Corps a call and said, look, we really need to issue this permit. We're either going to issue it for the final project or we're going to withdraw it. And the decision made was, given the easement response, there was obviously going to be some changes made to the project. We hadn't had the direction from the BCC at that time, so the Corps did decide to withdraw the permit. But we did get in writing from the DEP, should the board or the Corps of Engineers decide to reauthorize that permit, we could do so within 60 days. So not the best solution, but we still have that in writing and a path forward. So for me, your consultant, this does give me some concern as to, what is our response plan should we have a severe storm event come in. So we're going to be doing some research, looking at our existing authorizations for the Western Walton County Destin project. That was the project that was done in 2006, 2007. Looking if there's any way of extending those authorizations just solely for the event of a severe storm. Looking at the option of, do we need to be surveying that area? Should we develop a severe storm response plan? These are all things we're going to be hashing out with the Beach Management Committee and ultimately bringing to you for direction. So that's where we are today. Not the best place as far as a beach management position, but I think we're doing the best we possibly can with the cards we've been dealt. So with that, I'll open up for any questions you may have for me.
So when there is a storm, because there's going to be, it's inevitable that, how do we get our beaches back? What's the time process? I mean,
yeah,
I know we've built up the reserves, but if everybody had voted, and this is kind of more protecting north of the dunes, I understand that, but what's the time frame?
That's a very good question, and a similar question was asked by the BCC. For the western portion of Walton County where we have nourished, if we do have a severe storm event and a emergency declaration is declared by FEMA, the federal government, we are capable of restoring those beaches with disaster recovery funding. There will not be any such funding for the eastern half of Walton County. We could get a very small amount for what's called a FEMA berm. Basically, a speed bump running along the beach does not give you much protection at all. It's not a dune restoration, it's not a beach restoration. So on the eastern end, we're quite vulnerable. And it's been documented that those dunes have been eroding, the beach has been eroding, the structures there, the natural systems, they're vulnerable. So what we're going to look at is, since we've already gone through this entire process of, we don't have a DEP permit in hand, but we've done the environmental analysis, we've done the design, we've done the economics. Is there a vehicle that we could go ahead and get that DEP permit and put it on the shelf, put it in the cache, and then should a severe storm event come in, we could authorize that permit immediately, put some funding packages together, and go out and restore the beach? That's what we're going to be looking at as far as our response plan. But the plan that was presented before and had been marched forward over the last 10 years was a proactive approach. We're now retooling to where we're still prepared, but I'm afraid it's going to be more of a reactive approach. Regardless, I want that reaction to be immediate, as opposed to these things that happen with the Corps of Engineers and the DEP. They don't happen quickly. So if we can have those permits in hand, or at least documentation that all the work has been done to allow us to quickly respond, that's going to be my approach.
What's involved in getting those permits?
Like I said, a lot of the work is done. We could have had the DEP permit issued right now. If the Corps had said issue us the permit, we could do that. The risk is the objecting property owners, they're going to come back and say, well, we're going to sue you. We're going to sue the county because we don't want this beach project to happen on our property. That's when it gets a little dicey, and perhaps there's an agreement that can be made if we could receive such direction from the TDC and the BCC. And I was not prepared to answer a lot of these questions and go down this road, but perhaps there's agreement to where we obtain the permit with the specific direction of authorizing it only for a severe storm event. The county is not going to go out and nourish these beaches. They're not going to do anything on your private property unless there's a severe storm event, and this just gives us another tool in the toolbox, and that's solely what it's for. Unfortunately, things don't work that simple in real life.
I think the residents have spoken that many times that they don't want to do this project. However, I'm sure that would change if it was renamed in a storm that did occur, you know.
And I think that's what happened before. A
Right.
storm
Exactly.
came and- yes.
And we've had 10 years of very pretty calm weather. We've had some tropical events, but I don't know if it's going to be like that forever. And I think you're exactly right. It's not a matter of if, but when. But how we do that, and protect those folks' opinion, acknowledge that opinion, acknowledge their property rights. Perhaps there's a need for a workshop. I don't really know. Again, something we're going to hash out with the Beach Management Committee and come back to the TDC for some more direction. But
well, regardless, there needs to be clear communication, and people who are beachfront owners need to know exactly what's being asked of them. And it has to be clear that there is no commitment being asked for from them, but rather this is an emergency plan. Okay. Again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but
Sure.
I think your idea about discussing this in open forum is a good idea. Let me go back to something you said a little while ago, though, regarding the western part of the beaches. You said there's been some erosion. I'm not looking for an exact number, but just in the 10 years since we did the restoration of the western part of the beach, how much erosion would you estimate, within 5 or 10%?
we have it within 5 or 10%. It's between 80 to 90% of the placed volume remains on the beach today. And when I say remains on the beach, that's from the dune line all the way to the negative 20 to negative 30 foot contour. We're looking at the entire beach system with the sandbar.
But excuse me, in layman's terms, I don't know what placed volume means.
Sure.
But let's just put it in terms of if you added 30% to the beach that was there before, or 40%, whatever, how much of that remains is what I'm asking.
Yeah, we look at a number of metrics. So basically, we have the pre-construction condition. That was the 2005 survey, and that serves as our baseline.
Sure.
From that baseline, we've gained nearly 3 million cubic yards. Well, that's because we placed nearly 3 million cubic yards. So if you factor that out, the beach hasn't changed much at all. And that's where I get the 80 to 90%. As far as shoreline position, the actual location of the mean high water line, from the 2005 position, we've gained approximately 80 feet of beach. That's a very nice metric that a lot of folks don't realize. The 2005 position was a post-storm, highly eroded condition, but 80 feet of beach and 3 million cubic yards, give or take, that's a big deal. Whereas if you look at other projects around the state, they're anticipated to lose 50% of their beach within anywhere between 2, 5, 6, 7 years.
So if I'm understanding the numbers you're saying, you put 3 million cubic feet there, about 80 to 90% of that remains? Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
But how does that jive with the statement you made before that a lot of it has eroded? If you've lost 10, 15% over 10 years, that doesn't seem like serious erosion problem.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified. The western portion of the county, meaning the Nourish Beach, is performing very well and is relatively stable.
Okay.
The eastern portion, east of Topsail to the
Okay, I was
Inlet
specifically
Beach.
referring to the western part that had been restored 10 years ago.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just in terms of that, what was it, 9 miles or something that was that was done, something like that. It doesn't make any difference. But anyway, whatever it was, from the county line to roughly just past Sandestin, that was all restored, and that's about 3 million cubic feet. And you're saying 85% of that is still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And
that's what I want to know.
based on our 2014 survey, we haven't surveyed since, but we were surveying every year since then, and I feel very confident that shoreline is
So
doing
that
very
was a
well.
good move then 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
There seems to be some double standard, I don't know if that's the correct word, for the homeowners who don't want the beach nourished and don't want the public on their beaches. However, with a major storm event, they're going to want us to spend the money to put their beach back.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Where does that make sense?
My question then is,
Doesn't make sense.
Well, I don't think that's a fair statement.
Once we do that, even in an emergency situation, the big objection by the homeowners is that now you own the beach. The state owns the beach out there. Are they state going to own the beach if we have this emergency thing?
Yeah, and I want to be clear about this. When I speak of getting this permit as another tool in the toolbox, we're still going to have to record an ECL. So those property owners still are going to be affected. We're still going to have to obtain an easement of some form, whether it's through the federal government or the local county. A lot of the processes we're going through for this federal project are still going to have to occur. So the way I envision it, very idealized, granted, is after a storm event, we would have the permits in hand. We could do a workshop and we could say, if you do want the beach project, we're ready to go. Here's our permits, but we still need that easement and we still need that ECL. Who wants to sign up, and we'll move forward. The problem is if we don't have those permits, we could add on another 6 months, 12 months, 18 months before we can even do anything. It's still going to take time, but having those permits in hand is going to do a lot for us. And other counties have taken a very similar approach. Their beaches eroded. They've obtained the permit, and they've had objection from the property owners, and they've said, okay, we hear you. We respect your wishes. We're going to just take this permit and shelf it, and then if we have a hurricane, we'll address it at that time.
Well, going back to what we said before, I think it's important that you share that information with the beachfront property owners and get their feedback.
I wanted to address that. That came up a number of times. I think it was Mr. Safried that had said before the county does anything, if we reopen this issue, he encouraged us to contact all the property owners. Absolutely, we will do that. There were some, we could have done a better job, I'll say, with the public outreach. It was just the nature of the federal process. It took so long and a long period with very little activity. We won't make that mistake again.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, I heard everybody, but, so do we take this hurricane storm reduction project and shift it and prepare ourselves for the next storm? Kind of like insurance. I mean, is that two separate subjects, or?
I believe that was the direction that the board, and I think we'll have further discussion coming up. We were hit with, maybe Cat 3, and we had houses actually falling in. So I really like this approach. I mean, if we're not going to do the restoration, then I personally like, as a BCC member, like the approach of being proactive and preparing for if we ever do have a hurricane.
Yeah. Absolutely, Gary. And I want to be clear. I'm not going out and getting these permits now. I was just throwing out ideas, and the BCC has given us clear direction. We're shelving the HSDR project, and I don't want to get people ruffled up that, the county's now got this new tactic and we're going to hit it this direction. We're not doing anything without first taking it to the Beach Management Committee. Actually, without first doing some public workshops, Beach Management Committee, TDC. But we'll just continue working the issue and keep everyone informed.
Does this pertain to our public beach accesses as well, or is that a separate category for nourishment or being, after a major storm, being put back?
The board chose not to do any renourishment at this point. To table it.
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, I think that's, at this point in time, that's a separate issue. There is a property rights issue associated with the beach accesses. There is a property rights issue associated with the beach project and their individual private properties. But for the sake of simplicity, I think it's best we keep those separate for now. Just my personal opinion.
Any other comments?
No, they should be, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you. Okay, next we have Zender Communications. Jennifer. Hi.
Good morning. I am Jennifer Bonino. I'm here with Zender Communications, and I'm going to be giving you an update of the marketing highlights from February and March. We'll start with our co-op program. We're seeing significantly high numbers, much higher than past months. Obviously, we attribute this to a partnership we recently did with Oprah Magazine, both in print and online, and our partners had the ability to co-op in on that. That had reader service listings in 750,000 issues that went out to Visit Florida key markets. We also saw great results from our latest sweeps program. That was something we did with vacationfund.com, and all the partners had the ability to submit their packages for this one. Seaside was featured, saw a great number of entries there and over 4,500 leads. Our media team continues to secure placements in very high-end publications that are right for our audience. I think a lot of us have seen and talked about the Southern Living 50th anniversary, great coverage there. Of note, a new publication is Palette, which is focusing on food and culture in the South. We took advantage of our meetings opportunistic dollars and had a ad in the April issue of Meetings Today, which had a Florida supplement and went to 55,000 subscribers. We also took advantage of our regional brand opportunistic dollars and placed an ad in a new publication, Travel Girl, which actually had an editorial on the Florida Panhandle, also had an advertorial on our upcoming signature events, Sandestin Wine Festival, South Walton Beaches Wine and Food Festival. Added value, we talk about this every meeting, but our media team works very hard to make sure that for every dollar spent, we're getting another dollar in bonus value for you guys at no charge. Over $2 million now to date in added value, which represents 56% of our media buy. One of the most noteworthy this last month, or actually February, Southwest gave us a free month of in-flight and actually showed our video. So great coverage at no charge to us. Our winter digital co-op plan that features all of our banner advertising that our partners take part in, well exceeding the goals that they set for themselves, and we still have a whole nother month to go on that. We also always want to look at our digital performance here. As we know, 90% of consumers today are going to their mobile phone to plan their vacation, so mobile is very important to our plan. We're seeing well above industry average on our click-through rates here, and our background that we talked about in our last TDC meeting, we have the branded backgrounds on weather.com, continues to perform very well for us. And then on the desktop, obviously our latest creative for 30A Wine Festival performed very well. Beach safety, so our plan began March 1st and that'll run through August 31st. This is a digital campaign where we have geo-targeted banner ads that go to anyone in market. Those ads are served up through outlets like Facebook, Spotify, Pandora, Hulu, and they promote education, so our flag system, and encourage people to sign up for the text program. Our SEM, which is our search engine marketing, our Google Key AdWords, continue to exceed industry averages. As John mentioned, we have been working on the 2016-2017 co-op plan that'll go on sale May 9th, and that will close May 13th. And then on the creative front, we're always working to promote our signature events. So our most recent banner advertising for Sandestin Wine Festival, the Food Film Festival, which will happen this weekend. As John mentioned, we also recently updated the beach access signage. You saw that. We also worked with John's team and Pam to develop a new sales collateral folder. The one that they had been really outdated. So we gave this a fresh new look in keeping with the new brand. It has the ability to insert materials. We updated the flight map. Lots of good things that they can use here. We also updated the Beachgoers Guide. Two things were done here. We updated the information on the Van Ness Butler Jr. Regional Access and the Inlet Beach Access to make sure people know that that's wheelchair accessible. And then we also updated the flight map to remove any routes that were no longer applicable, but also to add new routes like Chicago and Cincinnati. And finally, on the social media front, we continue to watch our numbers, really strong growth here. Instagram continues to grow at a steady pace. We did see our YouTube slow up a bit, but we attribute that to, obviously, we finished our reserve spending campaign recently, and that had a lot of video. So with that ending, not surprising that that number slowed just a bit. This is just year-over-year growth for social media. And then our page performance index, we talk about this every meeting. This is basically measuring a combination of engagement and growth of our social channels. Our number there usually tends to be 15 to 20%. Again, we saw this dip, and that is attributed to that reserve spending ending, because Facebook likes you to put money behind its paid posts. So we had a lot of dollars going there, and then when you end it, you're going to see a dip. So we will see that probably level out as we begin to add those dollars back in. And that's all for this update. Any questions?
Jennifer, do you have any anecdotal information about the Southern Living placement that we made in February? Any feedback or comments on it?
I know I've heard wonderful things. I don't have any.
We're going to try to show a little piece of
You are?
video and
Okay.
update.
All right, good.
Overall, very flattering.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, Downs and St. Germain.
Good morning. I'm Joseph St. Germain with Downs St. Germain Research. Fairly brief update today. I'm going to go over some event research, also show you a GIS map, and then go over our market research plan for the new year. So we were at the Wine, Women, and Shoes event in, I guess, mid to late February. From the research, there was around over 1,100 attendees, and that we get from the event organizer. About half of the attendees were local. About another quarter were day trippers, and then the last quarter being people staying in paid accommodations and visiting friends and relatives. So overall, you have a direct spend of over $250,000 with a total estimated economic impact approaching $385,000. A brief profile of what these visitors look like, how long they were staying, etc. As you can see, the Pensacola Mobile market is a large market for this particular event. We looked at a GIS map, and this, I'll get to the map. This is from our visitor tracking study, and it's just a way to relook at everything. And just from the conversations we've had about some in-market marketing, we looked at what percentage of visitors use the term South Walton while describing this area, and then we broke it down by area. So as you can see, there wasn't any market where you have over 30% of the people using South Walton to discuss the area. And it changes based upon particular areas, but it really does kind of, again, reinforce the usefulness and utility of marketing South Walton and naming the South Walton as the destination, because it's as a whole, there is a lot of coverage, and then as you break it down by city, as you can see, we've even yet to reach where 1 out of 3 of your visitors consider this area in their own mind when they're talking about it, calling it South Walton. And then this is also in your packet, a breakdown of what we plan on doing this year. This will run from March, so right now, until March of 2017. The research we'll still be doing the quarterly visitor tracking and ADR studies, so that will continue as usual. We also plan on doing another potential visitor study, again, just looking at how we can get the type of visitor we want to visit. And what we're going to do there is we're going to leverage, last time we were here, we talked about the lifestyle segmentation study, where we looked at some of your high-performing zip codes, when these are zip codes with the visitors that you're hoping to see visit here more often. So we're going to target this study on those areas and your very top cities, so we can really kind of get focus on how we can get more of those visitors into this area, but also the visitors with the higher incomes exactly that we're trying to target. So it's going to be like a potential visitor study, which we did previously, just a little bit more precise, a little bit with additional precision and utilizing research that we already have. We're going to do 5 more events, attendee studies. Wine, Women, and Shoes was an example of what that would be. So we're going to do that some more events, and we'll kind of work with the TDC staff as to which ones to be at. And then we're going to do some specific advertising research. We've given John and the rest of the team some ideas of what we can do. How we're going to do it is yet to be determined, and since we have a whole year, we can really kind of wait and see what's the best use for this advertising research. And then finally, we will do the economic impact of tourism study, which we do every year, and then attending meetings and et cetera. That is the end of the market research brief. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
I have a comment. I
Okay.
think going back 3 years ago, I think Dr. Downs has been involved about 3 years now, almost 3 years.
Correct.
The amount of information we're getting is vastly improved over what we had before that. And I think the kind of information, particularly the economic research that you're doing, is really valuable, helping us to spend the dollars where they need to be spent and getting a better understanding of who comes here. So compliments to you and Dr. Downs.
We appreciate that.
Madam Chair, question is 30% recognized South Walton out of that study. What community seemed to come up more often than the others?
I would need to double check
Any idea?
from the studies, because from that, with that question, we're just asking specifically about, do you use the term South Walton? I know in our last potential visitor study, we had them break down all the different areas. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I could go back into the research and look into that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute break if we could. Thank you. Just 5 minutes.
I hear you. Coffee and water.
All right, calling the meeting back to order, please.
That's cool. You were there.
We're going to divert from the agenda just a minute and ask Mr. Audie to come up and give us a spring break. I've already heard good things and seen good things, and
Yes, thank
appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, Audie. Yes, thank you. Well, the deputies out there have been doing a fantastic job. So let me give you a first update. You remember the equipment that you got for us, the rescue boards? We did actually use that not too long ago, and we did rescue somebody utilizing those boards. So that has been a success. So thank you so much. We've got the jet skis. We've got 2 jet skis positioned on the beach with the jet ski trailers that you helped bought us as well. We've got the life vests that all the beach guys are carrying and have been trained on. So that's another added bonus for us. Safety equipment, we do appreciate y'all doing that for us. So spring break has been relatively light. Probably a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that the Sheriff's Office has done a fantastic job in getting the message out, both in social media, in the newspapers, things like that. We actually work directly or communicate directly with a lot of the schools. So Corey, our PIO, has done a fantastic job doing that. The second thing is probably weather. As you know, March was a little cool a few days, rain quite a bit, so that kept people off the beach. That drove our numbers down a little bit. Right now, today we're at 280 arrests, which is only half of what we did last year. So that's a fairly good number. So we did not see the Panama City Beach crowd come over. As you know, their numbers are down as well, so none of that happened. So yeah, it's been a good success this year. The only downside that I would say, we did have one drowning out in Rosemary Beach, a very unfortunate accident. But that was the only drowning that we've had. It was under red flag conditions. South Walton Fire got there, we got there, but we were unsuccessful in saving that person's life. But anyway, good spring break. We thank you for all your support that you've done for us. We at the Sheriff's Office appreciate that. And certainly if you need anything for us, please let us know and we'll be happy. Any questions about spring break?
Do we have any questions?
I just want to make a comment that what a wonderful job they've done, because I work over in the east part of Destin in the Crystal Beach area, and they may have stopped in Walton County, but I can say they pushed a little bit farther west into Destin. So I think that's kudos to the Walton County SO Department of KISS.
Thank you. And that is the vision of the sheriff. The sheriff has a vision, especially with the beach patrol, to eventually push the beach what we call more south to Scenic Gulf, 30A, Sandestin, have them really kind of relieve them, as we put it, relieve them of patrol responsibilities. For now, we just don't have enough staffing. Patrol guys have to answer calls for service. You may see them in Sandestin. You may see them on Chat Holly. north of 98. That's because we're trying to increase our staffing. We're working on that now, but it is the sheriff's vision to push those guys further south, what we call further south on the sand, and get more exposure down there and keep things under control where we don't have to have alcohol bans or crazy ordinances to keep things under control. I think the sheriff has done a good job in getting us the equipment along with y'all and the staffing that we need to keep things in order in South Walton. So again, appreciate everything you've done for us.
Audie, is there anything on your wish list that you'd like to have?
Cars, trucks. I mean, we need vehicles. We always need vehicles. But right now, personnel, I mean, and that's not really, personnel is really, we have the slots available. It's tough times finding quality people that have to get through our process. We have a pretty strenuous process to go through, so it is kind of tough. And so we're working on that. We're constantly working on that. So we have, I think, about 8 in the FTO program now. They'll all come to the south end and help support staffing. The sheriff has added additional staffing. I just want to tell you, I've got there's 50 in the south end from top to bottom. I'll be the 50th one, but we have 50 top to bottom, and probably if we're fully staffed after all the vacancies, maybe about 63. So that's patrol, that's beach patrol, that's investigations, that's administrative staff, that's civilians that we have. So about 50 south of the bay that work full time on the south end.
You have a deputy, Carrie Carpenter, that does some training, that does the training?
Yes, she's on the north end. She's in the training unit.
Yeah,
yes.
She utilizes the pool at the Hilton to train for the water rescue and such. And she's just watching her work.
Yes, she's
very professional.
Great asset to our agency.
Very awesome.
Does a very good job. So
I just wanted to acknowledge her.
Thank you. I'll let her know that you said that. Yeah. I really would.
I think we ought to all use the pool over there, don't you?
Yeah. Can I get a wristband, Gary? Yeah.
Y'all can have the hot tub. I want the hot tub. Y'all can have the
Audie, I understand that that the legislative group passed 10%
Yes,
of the
sir.
TDC for, it actually was just, it wasn't for the state of Florida, it was just, we ended up just for our area up here, Bay, Walton, and Okaloosa County, to make sure that you guys have what you need.
Yes, sir. And I think some
for
of
the
that money
services.
is probably going to be capital outlay, a little bit of capital outlay with especially our South Walton building.
Right.
Now, if I bring one more person down, I'm going to have to kick FDLE out. We have a FDLE agent that's part of a task force. I'm going to have to put him out. We are out of space. And so with 13 extra people coming down, maybe a crime analysis person's coming down, I really kind of see with the sheriff's vision that you will probably see more operations, not just more people, but you may see more operations out of the South Bureau building. So we're going to have to expand. We need to expand. We'll probably do more training down there, just all kinds of things. But I think you're going to see a lot more activity out of that South End substation in the next year or so, a couple of years. So.
Good. It's good to see y'all down there.
And thank you. And we appreciate, again, everything you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, thank you for being patient with us.
Good morning to you all. For the record, Pamela Watkins, Director of Sales. Your first slide shows Wine, Women, and Shoes in Nashville. This is the second time we've been to Nashville. And this Nashville is the sister city to the one they do in Sandestin. And they actually go around the country. They do about 50 different cities. With Nashville, those ladies have claimed South Walton as their official beach. And when we're there, we engage them and talk about girlfriends' getaways, romance in the fall with their husband, a bachelorette party. So we try to get them here in the shoulder and the winter season. And with that direct flight with Southwest out of Panama City, it's perfect. It's a match made in heaven. Next slide is the Visit Florida Familiarization Tour. Back in February, we had 2 groups of people from the I-10 Welcome Center in Pensacola. They came on 2 different days. They have about 6,000 people that go through their center just on a given weekend. Visit Florida has 5 welcome centers throughout the state. They have a little bit over 3 million visitors that go through those welcome centers. And from what this team tells me, our visitor guide is the most popular visitor guide. And it really helps them to see who we are, what we do, What are the things that visitors can do while they're here? And it doesn't necessarily mean that that particular visitor at that particular time is going to head to South Walton. But if they're driving through the state, going somewhere else, it's great to get our visitor guide in their hand and have them know what we do. We will be heading on April 20th to Atlanta with Visit Florida. They have 10 partners that they select to go with them to a meeting planner event. It's about 100 meeting planners in a very small, intimate setting, so we can really, push our product and push our meeting facilities. Next is our visitor center stats. And as you can see, February, March, we were down 2% February, 34% in March, and to date, January through March, 9%. There is no rhyme or reason why people stop, why the numbers are up and why numbers are down in the visitor center. But if you look at these next numbers for the branded merchandise sales, we were up 25% in February, 16% in March, and 12% January through March. So we've got some dynamite Visit South Walton branded merchandise that people are purchasing for themselves and as gifts to take back home. I think you're aware that we have an online store on our Visit South Walton website. We started that back in May. We've only sold $702 worth of merchandise, but it's going to grow. I'm confident it's going to grow, and we've got some strategy in how we can make that happen. We've also recently done some upgrades in the visitor center. We have a 55-inch touchscreen TV. We've been wanting to do this for quite some time, but we had to wait for the new website to be up and have all the bugs out of it. So now a visitor can come in and do the magic on the screen and look for restaurants and beach access. And it's amazing. Some people they want to ask you those questions, but other people want to find out for themselves. So having that as a tool in the visitor center is wonderful. That picture on the right is our new display space for our branded merchandise, and I think in part that's why our merchandise sales are up, because it's attractive. You can look at all the merchandise and you pick out a shirt, the color, the size you want. We go in the back and get it for you and package it up real pretty, and away you go. So that was well needed. That top picture is our current visitor center team, Norma Jean Umbel and Jonathan Kornman and Brooke DeSalvo. Jonathan is new. He has been with us almost a month, and he is in the audience. Could you stand, please? He's doing an excellent job. He's a full-time employee. We recently hired a part-time person who's being actually trained this week. She'll be trained for about a month, and then she'll work Saturdays and Sundays along with a full-time staff person. So we have 3 full-time and 1 part-time. That bottom picture, if you can see, Norma Jean is holding an orchid. I call that the tourism human factor. We stand up here and we talk to you about click-throughs and bed tax and impressions and all these numbers, and it's important for you to know that. In the visitor center, we have 20,000 people that come through those doors every year. If you come during spring break or you come during the summer, you're probably going to come once, and you're not going to come back the rest of your stay. But in the fall and the winter time, we have second homeowners that come and stay for several months. We have our snowbirds that come. They come 2, 3, 4, 5 times. They come to ask the team, where can I go to eat, or what's happening in February, or what's happening around the Christmas holidays. And so the team forms friendships. They form, relationships. It's not just you're in and you're out. And if you come in and ask what restaurant to go to, they're going to come back and tell you that they went there and how they liked it. They're constantly bringing in cookies, donuts. This gentleman brought in a dozen donuts from Donut Hole one day, and I said, "Why did you bring us these donuts? Not that we don't want them, but why did you bring them?" And he said, "Every morning I sit at the Donut Hole and I have breakfast." And today I was thinking, those girls in the visitor center, I bet they would love some donuts. So, they bring gifts, and this particular one was an orchid that someone brought to thank the team for helping them before they headed home. So just want to, pass that along, that I have a great team in the Visitor Center. They do an excellent job, and I just call that the human factor.
What day does he bring the donuts?
Well, he brought them one time, but we're hoping he comes back. Now, actually, Jason brings the donuts. He's the new guy, so he brings the donuts.
Mr. Miller could bring some donuts to you one day.
Yes, you could. The days that you come to sign the checks.
All right.
There you go.
All right.
Two dates for you.
Talked myself into that one, didn't I?
April 7th, which is Thursday, that is the deadline for the sponsorship grant application. So keep that in mind. May 4th, the TDC will sponsor the Chamber Luncheon to kick off National Tourism Week. That'll be held at Sandestin in the Azalea Ballroom at 11:30. So we hope you can make that and put it on your calendar. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for all your
thank
hard
you.
work.
John Irvin, again. We do have a couple of quick slides for you. I'll ask y'all to help me welcome this young lady here, Hannah Kraft, who has joined our team recently. Some of you may recall John Cross, her predecessor, and she's doing a great job getting all settled in and doing the creative work and supporting the website and a lot of other necessary things. Carrie is not with us today because she has got an opportunity in Ohio where family is, and so we thank her for her service. The media relations work that she has done for us has been exceptional. So that vacancy is posted and actually closes next Monday. So we are continually looking for team members. And then thanking Mr. Richard Ross. Some of you know he was at the Hilton and served on the marketing committee for what must have been almost 3 years, and gave an awful lot of time and energy to that. We wish him well in his Texas adventures, and have received some great interest in the vacant chair. And I had 5 applicants, which, again, anybody who is willing to give their time to the committee is certainly flattering. Nancy Stanley would be our selection. There's a lot of reasons, but 15 years in the industry and a lot of depth here. She also has interest with the St. Joe Company that run on the Central County and East, whereas we already have 4 or 5, depending on how you want to categorize it, Western Walton County businesses represented on that committee, and only 2 from the 30A, so she would be a 3rd. So that is our recommendation. But listen, I think you guys know this about everything we do, just like this meeting. These are open to the public. Please come if you have an interest, and you can always be a part of it. That's very open dialogues. We get very low attendance in the room. We're happy that they are streamed now, which is a huge deal. I hope some of you have the opportunity to watch that if you're not in the room. Moving on to some of the communications things worth noting. Our public relations RFP is open and closes in a couple of weeks. That'll be for the fiscal 17 term. We expended our 3rd year. You guys saw the scope. It's been a long time, but the scope is unchanged since the last time you saw it, and the BCC approved us to do that. One of the most important tasks for the PR agency is targeting national and trophy media to get editorial coverage, and in January and February we had 1.8 million in equivalent attention to this market, which is so substantial. You're pushing 30 million in some years when you consider we're spending 4 million in net, but that we're gaining 3 million in editorial equivalency is a serious part of what we do. As far as your team, media relations, the TMS, Travel Writers Summit, we have 40 attendees that will be here in 10 days. The Hilton won that bid for being their host, but of course we're spending a great deal of time and effort touring them around the county so that they understand the culinary scene, they understand the eco-exploring, they understand the attributes. Visit Florida is bringing 3 big VIPs from the UK. We're one of 3 places in Florida that they're coming. We don't go seek international, but when they request it and they're going to be in the Panhandle, we've converted that. And a number of assignments, whether it's
people who want to come and write about paddling and craft beer scene in South Walton, and on and on and on. More requests than we can actually fulfill right now because of the occupancies, a lot of the businesses in peak season, and so we're pushing all to non-peak times. I was in New York just recently. It was a great opportunity to be there with Visit Florida, who had a national blitz to media. One of the ways we get at these $30 million worth of attentions. But we also did one-on-one meetings while we were there. So to have an opportunity to sit down with, I think it was 15, 16, between Carrie, Kelly, and I, places like Travel Channel and Condé Nast, Traveler Magazine. Obviously, it's a great compliment to be given time and consideration in their editorial calendars. But it was also fascinating to listen to them that they're struggling with some of the same things we're struggling with, which is content overload. Everybody's becoming numb to just the content, and we got to get back to storytelling, and we got to get back to context that matters to somebody's life and somebody's heart and somebody's mind. That sounds lovely, but that's an enormous engineering that it takes to produce 365 days worth of context instead of content. But it really inspired us to keep going. If those companies were struggling with the same thing, we knew we were on the right path. And so we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. Let's see what else we got. Oh, sorry. Yes. You guys helped us with the RFP scope today. That is enormous, right? I mean, that's 4 years potentially of work coming, and many millions of dollars and many thousands of hours. So that is a huge deal. It's going to take us the rest of this year basically to address that. Southern Living Partnership you asked about, those videos are still running. I have very little optimism after our electrical malfunctions here that the audio will work, but I'll ask them to see if they can push play. We get all the ownership of those videos now at the end of this term. They had it on their site. And yes, I think we managed. Maybe you can hear something.
What makes it special is that everybody's doing what they love. People moved here to be business owners or musicians or to be painters and sculptors. Everybody's kind of pushing each other to do better and do more. So you can't help but feed off of that energy. There are a ton of artists up and down 30A and in South Walton. Don Francisco is one of my favorites.
I think a lot of artists come here to get inspired. That's why it's such a big art community. What inspires me about South Walton, it's the beach, the colors, you know, the texture of the sand.
There's people who do glass blowing. Allison Craft, she does handmade leather and pearl jewelry, which sell not only all around the area, but to musicians all over the country.
Everybody's so encouraging for what you do, and it's just such a tight-knit community, and they're here because they want to be, and they're here because it's such a cool place to live.
I've always admired what they do, and it's inspired me to not just build guitars, but to build guitars that I feel like are pieces of art as well. It takes about 4 months to build a guitar, and I'm by myself in my shop doing it, so it's really neat to be able to finally put it out there and let people see it when I get done with it, and see people's reactions to both the guitars and the songs. We live in a community where people can do art and people support it. So many people struggle to make a living as an artist, whether it's a musician or a painter or a sculptor. And around here, it's like if you believe in it, everybody supports you. Everybody else believes in you, and that's such a really neat thing. Not many places in the world really offer that. South Walton is different because it's a tight-knit community that don't really exist anymore. When you're here, it's not really this tangible thing, but you can just feel it. People who come here go, I just love this place. And that's what makes this area special.
So that is just one example of the 5 pieces that were produced, and again, trying to tell a story instead of sell, promote, and convert. It's a very different exercise, but very powerful pieces of content. Yes, sir.
John, if I may add to what that video just showed us. I'm president of the Children's Advocacy Center. We're building a new facility in Defuniak Springs, which will open this Friday. It's a huge center, 15,000 square feet. But the reason I'm mentioning it here is that one of our board members got the support and help of 12 artists from South Walton to donate their work to put in the center. And also Bill, help me out. How much did that guitar sell for? We had a gala a couple of weeks ago, and Chris, $4,500. He donated one of his homemade guitars, and it sold for $4,500. That money goes to the Children's Advocacy Center. But 12 of these artists, and I can't name them, but they donated their talent and time to help the center, and we really appreciate that.
It's certainly something that we can be proud of and celebrate, and it is part of the business model too, is that if you're choosing to go somewhere and you have any interest in arts, in culture, in quality dining, we're going to win that decision. And so it's been great to have an Artist of the Year program, which Melody Bogle currently is. But yeah, Chris's guitars are literally the most beautiful things I've ever seen out of an instrument. He's now selling those for over 10 grand in some cases where it's completely tricked out. But the generosity that everybody has and the appreciation, as he said, that if you believe in it for some reason here in this community and our visitors, we support it, and that's about as good as it gets. So we try to capture that because that's more powerful than, you know, a sales pitch at any day of the week.
Context.
Context, yes, it matters in people's lives. So we appreciate that, and we'll be again repurposing those videos now that we own them. Visit Florida is working extremely hard to basically own their share of the world in the digital market for promotion of a destination. And so they're doing another roadshow with the big headquarters, Google, Adobe, which is, again, context program, Twitter. And so I'm fortunate enough to be able to go as a contingent with Visit Florida again. And this time there's going to be some real effort to look at beta programs and participation. You guys are seeing Facebook Live, and these things just come out one after another. And so it is a full-time job just to try to keep up with all of that stuff. And last thing, we talk about peak and non-peak. The event program has really supported non-peak for a long, long time. We have got 6 monster big events coming in the next 2 months. It's about $193,000 worth of support that we give just to those events, but you saw some of the economic impacts. You're talking about millions coming into the community. So I think there's a significant burden that's starting to occur on attendees because there's so many events. But if we remember why there's events, which is, again, to support the economy, I hope to continue to see everybody else do their best to support those as well. So don't miss them. Emerald and food films, wine, art, all kinds of stuff coming in the near future. So thank you for letting, I should mention, I'm sorry to end on sort of a tough note, but not everything goes as planned. We've had some real significant struggles with our beach safety texting program and our supplier for that. Long story short, we're actually looking at other vendors to see if we have a backup system if we can't get reliable, consistent service with them. Pretty significant to be able to maintain the knowledge out there for the text number, which is free, and you can sign up and get all of the updates from. So we have a couple of things we're working on, but all in all, a good report, I hope.
Do you have any update on Airbnb?
You know, I think we may have touched on it briefly before. They are in an effort to take over the world, and they're doing so. But we're one of 4 states that they signed an agreement with to remit bed tax for all of their properties in this state to the Department of Revenue. And so that probably diffused one of the issues which some special interest groups and industry groups would have attacked them for not being in compliance. So that's a pretty disarming step, I think, on their part. And there's still apprehension, I would say, generally in the industry. But right now, I'm not aware of any market where Airbnb has flexed and grown that all tourism hasn't grown. I don't think there's been displacement established yet. So if that makes you feel a little bit better, that more is better, I think it might be as simple as that in some cases.
You're saying the Department of Revenue gets a check from them, but how does Walton County benefit?
And then each county is responsible to work with the Department of Revenue on the taxes that originated in their county. So it's a reverse flow, which a lot of the clerk's offices have got to make some adjustments to. but you can imagine the alternative, which is to try to run compliance on a company in California, door to door code enforcement of that type of thing on collections. So,
are you feeling or seeing their presence here at all?
I don't think this area has the inventory that's as attractive to them as maybe some other. That's just my. Jennifer's probably got the best perspective, but we've been pretty static on the 11,000-ish rental units. There's other places in Florida where there's huge potential. They've targeted places like Philadelphia and Brazil's capital, where they know that they can pick up thousands of rentals that are available to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Hey, Brian.
Good morning, Council. I'm Brian Kellenberger, Director of Beach Operations. Appreciate your time this morning. A few updates from our department. Destination improvement projects. Coastal Dune Lake signs. We're on our Phase 3, which will be the last 6 of the coastal dune lakes that are on the multi-use path. This is the theme and content for each lake. Melinda Gates with Walton County's Environmental Department is working on the content and the slides. She had her baby last week, so she's out for a couple of months, but she has assured me that she'll continue on, and then we'll send it to the marketing committee for review of brand standards. So she did a fabulous job on our first 2 phases, and I expect that she'll do just as well on this phase as well. Multi-use path projects, Grayton Beach to Western Lake. Phase 1, Melissa indicated that FDOT had appropriated the funds for it. Along with that came the notice to proceed. That was the last step we were looking for. This slide doesn't indicate that. I actually have it as pending, but that came in last week. Didn't get a chance to change the slide. But anyway, so Preble Risch, engineer of record, will be putting that out for the construction RFP. And that'll then be approved by the BCC. And we'll get that project underway. Phase 2 is western side of Western Lake to Highway 283. That one also includes some of our parking for Highway 30A project. Still under design and permitting. We expect that to carry on through the spring and summer, and then approval by various approval levels, construction RFP, and then construction in fall, early next year. Highway 98 to 30A West Connector, that's the missing link, so to speak. That project's on hold pending reclassification of that section of the highway. That'll make it easier to put that path in, and quite possibly FDOT will put that path in for us. Some other smaller projects we have, this is some drainage projects around Highway 395. This is projects we're working on in conjunction with the Public Works Department. The area east of Highway 395 has now been, will be incorporated into the new design of that intersection there. The area west of it, the design has been approved. The materials have been purchased, are en route to be delivered, and Public Works will start on that here pretty soon. Our hope is to get it done before summer hits, so everybody's aware of it, and we'll be working to make that goal. What it is, it's those 3 roads right there that are dirt coming in: Nightcap, Live Oak, Dogwood, and Thyme. We're putting in a collection basin on the multi-use path that will then carry water to the dirt roads, where there'll be an exfiltration system underneath the dirt roads. So if you notice, there's low spots right there. They'll collect that water, get it out of the way. We'll also put in a little bit of landscaping in that small median, hopefully to help beautify that area as well. And the same thing will be west or east of 395, but like I said, that's pending redesign of that whole intersection, but be the same concept. Highway 30A parking project, been going on for a while, where you have 6% plans under review. We'll be taking those before the BCC on the 12th for approval, and then the 90% and then 100% construction documents will happen pretty quick. We'd hope to get this in before summer season. Don't really see it happening, especially the areas we're doing it are heavily congested areas. So it'll probably be construction to be suspended until September. And when we do that, we'll be adding, it was roughly 250 spaces in different locations on 30A. Bulk of them being at Fort Panic and at in the Grayton Beach area to the east of 283. North side of the road, some south of 30A going down south of 283. Much needed parking area. Most of it was centered around our regional beach accesses, except for the area at 283. But so it should help some. As we all know, parking's a big problem on 30A, but we're getting started. NRD phase 3. These were some projects that were identified a few years ago. We actually completed Graydon Beach and Dothan Street. Those were reconstruction of our neighborhood beach accesses. The other 4 projects are miscellaneous repairs to Edward Lane and Gulfview Heights restroom pavilions, mainly plumbing, electrical, and some exterior cosmetic work. And the other 2 projects are a new neighborhood beach access in the Dune Allen area and a canoe kayak launch off of East Mitchell, which is on North 283, last road to the right. Walton County owns a small lot down there. It'll have 6 parking spaces, a nice little walk down. This is the Palms of Dune Allen, typical boardwalk we have. This is right across from the Tom Thumb in Dune Allen. Typical boardwalk, dune walkover. It'll have a bench, seating area, rinse shower, bike racks, and all appropriate signage. This is the Bay Ranchettes off of 283. A couple parking spaces up front. Nice little meandering concrete walk with a handicap area for a picnic table, and then a canoe kayak launch and pier. These are all being designed, permitted, and constructed by FDEP, NRDA projects. We're operating strictly as the user recipient of these projects. Construction expected to start in September on these as well. Design and permitting is taken as they had scheduled it, a little longer than we would like to do it, but that's FDEP. Graydon Beach restroom beach access. We have corresponded with FDEP, Division of State Lands. That's the person that owns Graydon Beach. We have a long-term lease with it. They are reviewing our land management amendment and also our current management plan, because we had received some complaints, or they had received some complaints there last year about vendors, some use of or abuse of the property by people visiting there. So the restroom project will solve some of that abuse, and then we've already changed how we deal with vendors on there by creating our vendor zones and enforcing those properly. And so we feel like that we have corrected the problems that were complained about last year. Beach cleaning. February was down a little bit from the previous year. Contribute that to weather. There's our daily collection rates. Like I say, pretty much flat, and then we spiked a little bit there in the middle and raised a little bit in the end. March was right on as it was last year. Approximately 6,000 bags collected for the month. And once again, you can see picked up in the middle and towards the end, corresponds with spring break. Beach code enforcement. February citations, written warnings, we're up a little bit. We had 0 last year, 7 this year. March, up considerably. Once again, corresponds with spring break. Majority of these are probably dogs, glass, of such like that. Beach code enforcement updates. We have our MS Access database system up and running. It's working fabulously. Our guys are able to enter data real time. We're still working on some reporting, but we're getting that ironed out. Our customized ArcGIS wildlife lighting ordinance program, still getting it implemented. Ran into a few snags with getting it to be able to talk to the property appraiser's website and pull that data in. But the intent was so once again our guys can collect data in real time, bring in information, and then produce the necessary notices. Wildlife lighting ordinance is the only traditional beach or code enforcement item that we administrate traditionally. We have to serve a notice, give them 30 days to correct, follow up, make sure it's corrected properly and all that. The rest of them we operate as more of an instantaneous citation to correct a problem. Personnel, we have hired a new beach ambassador. His name is John Callens. In our audience today, John is starting second week and picking up fabulously. So we welcome him to our team. Training certifications, as I had indicated before, we use the Florida Association of Code Enforcement certification process. All of our officers have been certified. It's a 4-level process. All of them are certified level 1. Jeff has through level 3, Harold has through level 2, and David is level 1. They're all will be going to the next level this year. I myself am certified in level 1 and will be doing level 2 this year myself. Some other certifications, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Sea Turtle Identification certifications, and the U.S. FWS Turtle Conservancy Association Wildlife Lighting certification. These are programs we go to make sure we're staying abreast of those two issues. Equipment, we were recently offered the use of some SLERS radios from the Sheriff's Office. All we have to do is reprogram. We had some money in our budget to do that. So Jeff is working on getting those incorporated into our officers. That'll put us in connection with SWFD and the Sheriff's Office on the beach. Currently, we don't have that communication capability. This will help out a lot because we interact with those agencies on a routine basis. So it'll help with connectivity and helping our mission on the beach. A few other things that's not on your packet. Our Destination Improvement Committee was lacking one person because we had a person resign, and it was the slot was just a member of the community. We advertised in accordance with the charter. We only received one application, unfortunately, but fortunately the person that did it applied seems to be well suited for the job. Her name is Elaine Newmeyer. She's an 18-year part-time, full-time resident. Part-time, they lived here or had a vacation home here for several years. Moved here full-time about 5 years ago. She's a retired realtor. They do have a condo. She's a bed tax collector. Lives north of 30A and walks the beach and bikes and hikes the multi-use path on a regular basis. Has an extreme desire to help improve the 30A corridor and understands the dynamics of South Walton. So I think she'll be a good fit for that Destination Improvement Committee. Another update is we have received the draft copy of our public space design guideline, and we're going to be reviewing that and sending it back to the contractor for some minor revisions. Then we'll share it with you for approval, and then on up to the BCC for final approval.
That's the design shred, right?
Yes, sir. That was the public space design shred we had, and then the end product is a design guideline that will give us, it's not specific items, but it's a guideline of which way to go in design, or when we're outfitting the public spaces,
right.
Mainly connectors between our communities and our regional beach accesses and neighborhood beach accesses. So, yes, sir.
Brian, on the 283, back about a year ago, I guess it was, we were going to work with the state on about 5 acres for a parking area, and we talked about some things.
Yes, sir. That was, we were asked to stand down by the BCC on that. There were some other things being considered. But what we had proposed was to take some area of the state park adjacent to the trailhead on 283, the Greenleaf Trail, and improve it into some parking areas that we could then use as a shuttle stop to take people down to the different beach accesses.
Right.
There were some other ideas in the works, so the BCC asked us to hold off on that for a while. Yep.
Brian, what are we doing about recycling, and who's doing it, and what are the terms of what we do?
Okay. With the Leave No Trace program, we take a lot of stuff off the beach every night in the form of tents, chairs, and umbrellas. Josh Irvin, our beach maintenance manager, worked with the landfill department, and we now have Walton County dumpsters behind our shop where we deposit all this, and it goes up there to be either recycled in the form of separated. If it's not usable, it's separated by metal and cloth. If it is usable, it goes into a holding pen where it will be sold at a Walton County sale auction that they have every year for surplus equipment.
Okay.
The wet garbage, of course, still goes into a waste management dumpsters and is carried to the landfill.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Stan, I believe this is your last day as the interim director, and we want to thank you very much. It's been, we missed you from the north, but we'll be glad to have you back. And one thing I want to say that Stan has really bragged about is the staff and how wonderful y'all are. So pass the word to those that aren't here that you're doing a terrific job. We appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you, and my wife thanks you.
And your kids thank you, us.
She said I'd been difficult to live with. I said, well, you've been saying that all along. Just real quickly, I want to add a little bit to Mr. Miller's question about recycling. You know, we just awarded a RFP to Jones Edmonds to design a new transfer station. And in that design, we'll have a new transfer station, but we will repurpose the existing facility for recycling. Up till recently, we have done recycling, but it was through what's called a dirty MRF system and through a crew of inmates who literally would pick it out as it went down the conveyor. As you can imagine, many issues there. The facility is just not adequate for that. So we're very optimistic that in the very near future we will have a design of a new transfer facility and repurposing of the old one, which will incorporate the recycling that you asked about. Just a few updates. You met Jason Cutshaw, our Director of Administration. Also, the BCC hired Mr. Jay Tusa, as the new Executive Director of the TDC. He will start employment next Monday, April the 11th, and he will be reaching out to each one of you very soon thereafter. He comes to us from the State Office of Tourism in Louisiana, and seems to be very qualified, very, very enthusiastic about the opportunity. Beach Access Workshop. We have a workshop scheduled for April the 12th here in this building at 3 o'clock. That will be facilitated by Mr. Dan Fenton, who's doing our strategic planning. And he'll be presenting, I'm sorry, I got those two confused. Okay, so I'll continue on. The workshop is to discuss the governance models, different governance models that TDCs operate under, public, private, hybrid of the two, and he's also going to present to the board as well and to the public not only those models but some ways that we can hopefully improve the current model. So he's going to talk about the different governance models, and then he's also going to talk about the current model and maybe some ways that we can improve that. The Beach Access Workshop update is regarding, I'm sure many of you have heard much discussion of late about the private-public beach issue. The BCC held a workshop on March, I believe it was the 16th. It was so heavily attended, we had to hold it down at Emerald Coast Middle School. It was a productive workshop. The board listened to both sides of the issue about public access and private property rights. And so many people spoke. It was kind of a late night, but it was a good workshop, as I said. And now the county attorney is working with Dave Theriac of Theriac in Spain to negotiate an agreement to bring back to the board hopefully at their April 12th meeting to consider for Dave Theriac of Theriac in Spain to represent the county in this issue going forward. TDT update, Mr. Norris mentioned the TDT legislation, which would allow up to 10% for public safety. Public safety meaning law enforcement, EMS, and lifeguards. That did pass the legislature, and as I'm told, it has made it to the governor's office as of March 30th.
It was transmitted on March 30th, that's correct. It has been sent to the governor for that. And just to clarify one thing, Mr. Sunday and I talked about this yesterday. The bill says it's going to be 10%, can be done, and it is, Mr. Norris noted, it's for only counties that are adjacent to the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic that do not levy the tourist impact tax under 125.0108. As of today, that's only Monroe County, the Keys, that specifically applies to them. There is a final bill analysis from the House of Representatives, and some of you may have seen it. I know some people in the community have expressed concern. That final bill analysis contains a footnote that claims only 3 counties in the state of Florida will apply for this, and specifically states that currently Bay, Gulf, and Okaloosa counties are those 3. That is incorrect in my opinion, but that is what the House's final bill analysis says. That's not a governing provision of law. The requirements, just so everybody's aware, we have to generate at least $10 million in tourist development tax revenue a year. We clearly do that. We have to have an estimated population less than 225,000. We have that. And there must be at least 3 municipalities in our county. I can tell you all, rest assured, we do have 3 municipalities. In fact, I've had at least 2 people argue with me over the last 2 weeks that no, in fact, we only have 2. Paxton isn't a municipality. Paxton's the second oldest municipality in this, even though they are recognized as the town of Paxton in many publications, including some online databases. They've been incorporated since 1952. We have 3 municipalities. That's Freeport, Defuniak, Paxton. Miramar Beach, however, is not a municipality. My understanding is apparently Miramar Beach and Defuniak were apparently the ones considered by the legislature when that was prepared. I also am not going to, I don't represent Gulf County, but I remain questionable why Gulf County will qualify when I'm unaware of more than 2 municipalities there. So perhaps that was just an oversight and they inverted the 2 of ours. But to the extent that this would apply to Walton County, in my opinion, should this bill be signed by the governor, it would apply to us. So just in case you hear that, and I know that's been out in the community that somehow we got exempted from that bill or we aren't going to be able to do that, I don't believe that's correct, but that is out there. So if you hear it, those are the facts. That's what the bill reads.
So it's currently in the governor's office, and we'll wait to hear more on that.
Stan, I'd like to make a comment about that. This has been discussed for 6 months or so, and I've had strong reservations about this from the beginning, not because it doesn't seem like a good idea. It does seem like a good idea, but my concern is that and this has happened in the past with lottery funds in a lot of places, where the legislature then says, okay, you have a certain requirement to fund something, like a lottery funds education, or in this case, 10% would go of the TDC budget would go toward law enforcement and related services. But the concern that I have is that those that are dealing with the budget would then deduct a certain amount that already goes to the sheriff's department in this case. And then use the argument that, well, you're getting 10% from the state. So 10% for us is $2 million. So what I would hate to see happen in Walton County and certainly any other county would be that those that are in charge of the budget then say, oh, well, you're getting $2 million from the TDC or from the bed tax, therefore we can subtract $1 million from the normal budget.
Mr. Miller, let me interject. I think the language of the bill itself, and for anybody's reference, is House Bill 7099. You can look that up under Florida HB 7099. To make sure you have the current version, you should look for the version that is labeled enrolled at the top. You could also operate under engrossed 3. That's the same document, enrolled, so it's been sent to the governor. The statute, if it is approved by the governor, will be amended to state that this is a reimbursement program. If you meet the criteria I laid out, reimbursement of up to 10% of the tourist development tax can be used once the TDC makes a recommendation and the majority vote of the BCC approves it. But that reimbursement is only to use that for the impact related to tourism. So the taxes that we collect can only go to address impacts related to increased tourism and visitors to an area, and specifically says that a governing board may not use the taxes to supplant the normal operating expenses of an emergency medical services department, a fire department, a sheriff's office, or police department. In other words, we cannot, as Walton County, the BCC cannot, the TDC cannot, supplant existing or current expenditures by saying, okay, you're already spending this much, we're just going to offset your budget. It can only be to address the visitors, so it's an additional sum that cannot be used to supplant current funding sources. So that's why I'll say now that's going to be an issue that Mr. Sunday and I have talked about, and ultimately we'll talk about it with the board. I'm sure we'll talk about it with South Walton Fire District. I'm sure we'll talk about it with the Sheriff's Office. How does this 10% get allocated towards covering costs related to tourism? and how do we develop a plan to make sure that that's adequate as opposed to offset. So whether the BCC wants to do it, the same issue applies to South Walton Fire District and the Sheriff's Office. They can't come to us and say, hey, we need this much money to cover an existing expense. It's got to be as it relates to tourism. So it's not an open checkbook, and that would ultimately come to you to make a recommendation on that expenditure. And then, only upon, and the statute's clear, the board must, by majority vote, approve reimbursement made pursuant to this paragraph upon receipt of a recommendation from the Tourist Development Council. No expenditure can be made unless you make a recommendation first and foremost at this level. So it's going to be basically the way I view it, and the way I believe most county attorneys that I've talked with, as well as TDC attorneys, is going to be a burden somewhat on the agencies providing public safety services, the fire departments, EMS, and the Sheriff's Office, to get with the Board of County Commissioners and propose what that funding would look like. Because it's contemplated is you're going to spend the money and we're going to reimburse you. It's not going to be, hey, we need this, so send us the money so we can spend it.
They have statistical information of how many calls they have during the season that they can provide to help that.
Absolutely. I know the fire departments always do. They're required to track that, and the Sheriff's Office certainly has additional statistics of arrest rates, calls for service, types of calls of service. Same way with the fire department. Obviously, there's a huge difference between the types of calls of service, as Brian can tell you, that the fire district would see in the summer and peak seasons versus other times. Their public safety and public service aspect heightens a little bit more in those areas.
Well, thank you for the explanation, but let me also say that several of us worked on a study for the Sheriff's Department last year where we looked at their fleet maintenance, fleet management. They have about 250 vehicles. They're only replacing them at the rate of about 25 a year, so do the math. You expect a car to last 10 years? At about 30,000 miles a year? I don't think so. So I'm totally for the additional expenditure for law enforcement. They need more vehicles. And so I'm hoping that if this goes through, the governor signs it, it will mean that the sheriff will have more resources available to him. Thank you.
Okay. And the last update I have, speaking of Tallahassee, update on the letters that were sent to the Department of Revenue and the Auditor General. We received a response back from both. The response from the Department of Revenue was a written response. Response from the Auditor General was a verbal response. So I'll go quickly through those. I'm not going to read the letter to you from the Department of Revenue. However, I will read the last sentence, which captures the essence of the letter. It says, since Walton County self-administers its tourist development tax, the department's role is ministerial in nature. Therefore, it would be appropriate for the TDC to consult both the clerk of the court and the Board of County Commissioners to address the issues presented in your letter. We did speak with the Auditor General's office, who is here on site conducting an audit of the planning department, and they advised us that during that same time they will be conducting an analysis of the cost allocation of the county and a cost allocation of the clerk. And according to them, their field work will be complete in about 2 months. So we should have something in the next 2 or 3 months for you. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Any questions?
Just a suggestion, Stan. And I had mentioned this to some of the staff when I was signing off on the checks a couple of weeks ago. I think all of us here would have appreciated getting an update on Mr. Tussis being hired, and also Jason's being hired, and several other people. I mean, we heard about it roundabout, but I think an announcement to all of us would have been appropriate. So
I sent you an email.
Okay, I never received that email. I went back and looked. I don't remember receiving anything about that. But anyway, that's not a criticism. I just think that things like that are important, and we'd all appreciate getting it. Thank you.
Well, the issue too is we don't meet it every 2 months. I mean, and I'm sure he sent an email. So sorry if we neglected that. We will try to do better. Thank you. Any other comments from the council?
Motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute. Nope. We've got to do one more. Any public comments on any item? Come on up. Yes, you've been very patient. Come on up.
I know everybody's about ready to strangle me, or if you think I'm going to take up much of your time, but I won't. My name is Diane Pickett. I have a home in Defuniak Springs. I have a home in Sandestin, and I spend several months of the year in another state. So my perspective is probably going to be a little bit different than some of you. When I made the joke about the water tower and the north end of South Walton, I'm really serious. I'd love to have that $87,000 up there. We could do a lot with it. But I know we're not entitled to it because the bed tax is collected in South Walton. Now, let me give you a little bit of my credentials. I do know something about tourism development. I founded, funded, and personally managed the Chautauqua Assembly and started it about 20 years ago. And during that period of time, I generated several $1 million worth of free editorial coverage for the community of Defuniak Springs. I'm very focused on economic development, and Commissioner Jones, I'd like to have another conversation with you after this meeting on that subject. But I think Defuniak and South Walton, in fact all of North Walton, could benefit from us working together. I'm here to find out from you how we can do that. I don't think that you are entitled to give us money just because we ask for it and it's collected down here. But how can we work together? How can we participate? I think it was a legislative mandate that the bed tax is only collected south of the bay. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Can we change that? And if so, do you think it's a good idea? And I think I may be putting Mr. Tate to sleep. I'm not sure.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. But
he's just resting.
Okay. If you think that's a good idea, how would we go about it, and is it possible? I think with the widening of Highway 331, that obviously is a natural conduit for tourism. And I've maintained for many years that Defuniak and the north end of Walton County could work with the south end and generate not only business up there, but extend stays down here. In fact, when I was funding the Chautauqua, Pamela Watkins and I talked about a lot of things during that time. You've been very successful in generating huge tourism dollars. You've got lots of money. I just want some of it. And all of that is really down to your staff. You've had a great staff over the years. They've done a fantastic job. But to my question, do you think it would be a good idea to try to work together with the North and the South? I know that Bill Fletcher chairs a committee, and you give $30,000 or something like that for event planning up there. But what else can we do? Should we do it, and how would we do it?
I know there's been a North TDC board formed, and I know it's been investigated, and I'm not sure, I can't remember what came out of that. Clay, can you remember what came out of it?
We have the North Walton Tourism Advisory Committee, which is the advisory committee under the TDC that makes recommendations as to grant money for event sponsorship or activities. As to bed tax collection, if North Walton were to desire to have that, the Board of County Commissioners would basically have to put it out for a referendum. Only North Walton would vote in that referendum. Monies that were then collected north of the bay would be expended north of the bay within the tourism development statute. Monies collected south of the bay would then only be expended south of the bay. There would be no crossover between the two. You would have effectively two separate TDCs in operation in the county, because for us to expand it, that's effective. I say you'd have two separate operational entities, might be the best way to put it. And there's a lot of nuance to this. This question has been asked and addressed by the Attorney General in how you establish or expand an existing bed tax area. So could it be done? Yes, it would have to be at the will of the Board of County Commissioners to start the process, and then it would have to be up to the public north of the Choctawhatchee Bay, the area that is not currently part of the sub-county taxing district, to approve the imposition of a tourist development tax in that area of the county. Any bed tax collected north of the bay would then be able to be expended solely north of the bay, but that would then mean any bed tax collected south of the bay could only be expended south of the bay. It would create a division in that sense.
Do y'all think that would be a good idea?
It would really be up to the voters, but as we grow, before this time, I don't see that we've had that many places that could be bed tax collectors. But as we grow, then I think it needs, should be considered by BCC and then by the voters.
And Ms. Pickett, with all due respect, the board here, I'll just say the question you're asking, in all fairness, is probably best directed to the BCC. The reason why is that issue would not even be something within the purview of the current TDC.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just wondering if
position.
you all think that would be a good idea. Are we going to have, if that should come to pass, would we have a butting of heads? And is that going to make the problem bigger instead of smaller?
Ms. Pickett, I've always been for diversifying. I think we've always been a one-trick pony regarding the beach and tourism here. I don't know if that answers your question about the TDT taxes and all that, but again, there's a lot of beautiful environments and ecotourism up there available. There's also a tremendous amount of farming,
Well, I'll try to pursue this individually with the various members of the board, but the other thing I'm interested in doing, and you all might have some insights into this, is developing a heritage tourism program. Defuniak certainly is a fantastic site for that, and during the years that I managed Chautauqua, I actually brought bus tours to Defuniak for day-long trips. Very, very successful. They loved it. I just don't have time to do that anymore. But I'd like to introduce our community to the south end of Walton County. I do think we have an opportunity to work together. I think we should work together because basically the economy of South Walton is built on that 331 bridge. And if that baby goes out, we've got some real problems with economic development down here. And I don't think we should put all of our eggs in one basket labeled South Walton Beaches. So enough preaching. Thank you for your time, and I will be pursuing it with the other commissioners.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments in the audience? With that said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a great meeting.
I
have this thing with us. It's a long meeting. I'm all for
It does. It says
Yes. Oh, man, I know.
That's what I talked to two people over there. That's what they both told me. They both told me it didn't pass. It was a town.